Chapter 2740. Naturally, everyone had the attitude of watching a good show. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Taking a look at the guards who surrounded her, her lips curled into a cold smile. This is how Second Elder Miao treats guests. This elder doesn't think that anyone who disrupts our Miao tribe's sacred maiden selection ceremony is a guest. You address yourself as a guest, but you don't have any manners, so why should this elder treat you with respect? Second Elder Miao gave a cold laugh as his brows turned cold. Do it. The guards received the order and pounced towards Yiqing Luo and the others. Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly as his figure retreated backwards. Like a ghost, he broke away from the guards' encirclement. Yiqing Luo's gaze went past the crowd and landed on the middle of the first row, on Yan Zhenfei, whose brows were raised with a smile in her eyes. As though sensing Yiqing Luo's gaze, Yan Zhenfei shifted her gaze. Coincidentally, it met Yiqing Luo's eyes. She was extremely complacent, as though she was ridiculing Yiqing Luo. Fight with me? Are you qualified? Yiqing Luo wasn't angry. Instead, her charming eyes curved as her pink lips moved slightly, spitting out two words soundlessly, scum scum. Successfully, it made Yan Zhenfei's face turn black. Yiqing Luo's mood was joyous as she leisurely shifted her gaze away, looking towards Yan Xiaoyi and the others who were surrounded by the guards. Yiqing Luo pinched Dmo Xian's hand. Originally, she didn't want to create trouble at Yi's sacred maiden ceremony. But trouble came knocking on her door. She could only take action. She was preparing to bring Dmo Xian along to take action directly, using violence to curb violence. Suddenly, a clear and dignified voice shouted angrily, "Stop!" This angry shout. It was extremely dignified. It made those guards subconsciously stop what they were doing. Everyone's gazes turned over. They saw a lady dressed in blue Miao tribe clothing walking over slowly. The Miao tribe accessories on her gave off a jingle sound as she walked. Second Elder Miao's gaze, when it met the lady, his expression turned extremely ugly. "Miao Yi, what are you doing out here?" The woman was Miao Yi. There was a cold smile in Miao Yi's eyes. Her clearly young face was strangely mature and stern. Second Elder Miao wants to chase away the guest that I invited. If I don't come, who knows what Second Elder Miao will do to my guest. She walked to Yan Xiaoyi and the rest. Her petite body stood in front of them. His gaze swept across the surrounding guards bit by bit. Go down. Her voice was calm, but it was filled with authority. The guards immediately looked at Second Elder Miao. These guards knew about Miao Yi's status in the Miao tribe. If it was before, the guards did not care about Miao Yi at all. But now the Miao tribe leader and young lady Miao had done such a shameful thing to the Miao tribe. In the entire Miao tribe, Miao Yi was the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Moreover, Miao Yi had participated in the Miao tribe's holy maiden selection and was one of the candidates. They naturally did not dare to be rude to Miao Yi. Otherwise it would be disrespectful to the holy maiden and the ancient Gu worm. But Second Elder Miao was the elder of the Miao tribe. He was below 1 and above 10,000. Both sides were people that their guards could not afford to offend. For a moment, the guards did not know who they should listen to. Second Elder Miao was obviously aware of this point. Chapter 2741. Second Elder Miao's face darkened as he warned in a low voice. Miao Yi, you are not a descendant recognized by the Miao family. You are allowed to participate in the Holy Maiden selection only because you have the direct bloodline of the Miao tribe leader. If you cannot pass the Holy Maiden selection, do you know the consequences? I am not a descendant recognized by the Miao family. Then, that Miao Rongrong who had an illicit affair with her father, is she a descendant recognized by the Miao family? Miao Yi laughed coldly as she retorted rudely. Second Elder Miao's expression turned extremely ugly as he scolded her sternly. Miao Yi, what nonsense are you spouting? Second Elder Miao, you know very well whether I am spouting nonsense or not. Miao Yi smiled nonchalantly. Second Elder Miao did not expect this. This little girl who usually looked so obedient and harmless. How could she become so sharp-tongued? Could it be that her usual obedience was just an illusion? That her usual obedience was just an illusion? And now was this her true face? This thought sent chills down Second Elder Meow's spine. If it was really, as he had guessed, then this Meow-Yi was definitely not a good person. His white brows furrowed, as if something was strangling his heart. He was about to speak when Meow-Yi continued with a smile. Second Elder Meow, allow me to remind you that from the day Meow Yixiong and Meow Rongrong did that illicit affair and humiliated the Meow tribe, they were no longer part of the Meow tribe. And I, Meow-Yi, am the true eldest miss of the Meow tribe. Every word was forceful and sonorous. It was as if she was swearing something. Second Elder Meow's face alternated between green and white. His ruthless eyes stared straight at Meow-Yi, as if he wanted to see through this girl's soul. Meow-Yi let him look at her. The corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. She was still so confident and in high spirits. Second Elder Meow, these are the guests that I invited. I want them to sit here. Do you have any objections? Second Elder Meow stepped back, his gaze darting towards Yen Jinfei. Meow-Yi, eldest miss, this is not the time for you to be willful. He knew that what Meow-Yi said was the truth. Meow-Yi was indeed the direct bloodline of the Meow tribe leader. Even if Meow Rongrong was still here, Meow-Yi was the real young mistress of the Meow clan. He softened his tone and discussed, eldest miss, over there, is the emissary of the Palace of Darkness. You also know that the Palace of Darkness now represents the entire Nirvana realm. If we offend the emissary of the Palace of Darkness, the Meowgu family will be in trouble. Meow-Yi scoffed at Second Elder Meow's explanation. Second Elder Meow patiently looked at Yiqing Luo. Miss Yi, your eldest young miss friend, so you should consider for her sake. It's just a messenger from the Palace of Darkness. Yet Second Elder Meow is so humble. Those who don't know would think that your Meow tribe has fallen to the point where you have to curry favor with everyone you see. Yiqing Luo's fingers twirled a lock of hair as she gave a low laugh. She did not hide her disdain for Second Elder Meow at all. You. Second Elder Meow glared furiously. Don't you dare insult the Meowgu clan. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. As for this Second Elder Meow, she didn't know how to evaluate it. Chapter 2742. For the Meowgu family. He, the dignified Elder Meow, was willing to lower his head, but in order to curry favor with others, he treated the invited guests rudely. Yiqing Luo despised this kind of behavior. She leaned her little head on Emotien's arm and yawned lazily. She then continued, Second Elder Meow, if Miss Yin wishes to sit in our row, then let her come over to discuss it herself. Otherwise, there's no need for discussion. After saying that, she raised her hand and casually swept it. A surge of invisible profound energy instantly dispersed. In the air, a wave of air rolled down like the waves of the sea. Those guards who were standing there in a daze opened up a path. Yiqing Luo and the rest returned to their original seats. The delicacies, bowls, and chopsticks on the long table were all neatly returned to their original positions. This scene caused countless people in the surroundings to be dumbfounded, especially Second Elder Meow, who was the nearest. At the moment when Yiqing Luo made her move, her footsteps seemed to be floating as she retreated a few steps back. This power. It was too shocking. This was the infamous Yi Luo of the Northern Wave continent. His power was actually so powerful? Earth Profound 9th grade. Gui Wu, who was sitting by the side, put down his wine cup. He raised his eyes expressionlessly, calmly without any fluctuations. The moment she released her profound chi, her profound grade was Earth Profound 9th grade, about to step into Sky Profound realm. Earth Profound 9th grade. She, the Overlord's abandoned wife, is an Earth Profound 9th grade cultivator. And very likely, possibly, about to step into Sky Profound realm. This sentence seemed to have stirred up 1,000 waves, caused countless people to refute in disbelief. Earth Profound 9th grade? How old was Yi Luo? He looked at most 14 or 15 years old. A 14 or 15-year-old Earth Profound 9th grade cultivator. And to step into Sky Profound realm. Even the Overlord couldn't do it. Was Master Gui Wu speaking up for Yi Luo? Does Awu look like someone who would joke? Zoemo hooked his arm around Gui Wu's shoulder as a bewitching smile appeared on his face. Using his profound energy, he said, My family's Awu is someone you guys call the Grandmaster of the Golden Prophecy. Do you guys not believe his words? The astonishment in everyone's eyes deepened. They indeed couldn't believe it, and were even more unwilling to believe it. However, young Master Emma was right. Master Wu wasn't someone who would joke around. Master Wu's golden prophecy had never been off the mark. How could the ghost martial grandmaster casually talk about Yi Luo's profound rank? Furthermore, earlier when Yi Qing Luo casually waved her sleeves, it was the method that took away dozens of Miao tribe guards. No matter how one looked at it, it was absolutely not something that an ordinary profound practitioner could accomplish. Those people who were discussing about Yi Qing Luo being an abandoned woman etc. At this moment, all of them shut their mouths. The entire square was deathly silent. Yi Qing Luo expressed that in this era where the strong were revered, there was nothing more effective than showing off one's strength and using violence to curb violence. Coupled with Wu's testimony, those people, no matter how much they hated her, had no choice but to obediently tuck their tails between their legs. Yi Qing Luo's move. Second Elder Miao was also stunned. Earth Profound 9th grade cultivators were terrifying. At 14 or 15 years old, their profound rank had already reached Earth Profound 9th grade. Those who were about to step into Sky Profound Realm were even more terrifying. If Yi Luo was allowed to continue growing like this in the future, wouldn't it mean that he would really surpass the Overlord? Second Elder Miao cautiously turned his eyes sideways as he looked towards Yan Zhenfei's direction. Chapter 2743. At this moment, a coquettish laughter came from the side. Second Elder Miao's position in the Miao tribe is just so. Even a little junior can order you around. Then, a coquettish figure walked over. She had a curvaceous figure, and a waist as slender as a willow snake. That young and tender face was extremely beautiful, and her eyes were full of seductive charm. It seems that our Lord Messenger has overestimated Second Elder Miao. Second Elder Miao's body stiffened. He looked at that woman with an ugly expression. Miss May, this is the eldest miss of the Miao tribe, a candidate for the Holy Maiden. If she can become the Holy Maiden, her position will naturally be higher than mine. May raised her eyebrows and smiled so seductively that everyone's eyes were glued to her. But now she is not the Holy Maiden, is she? As soon as May finished speaking, Miao Yi's gaze fell on May. Miao Yi's lips curled into a distant but polite smile. Even if I am not the Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe now, I am still much nobler than a dog like you. After all, I am the eldest miss of the Miao tribe. You. May was enraged by Miao Yi's rebuke. You dare to scold me? She raised her hand and slapped Miao Yi's face. May was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, Miao Yi did not even have time to react. He could only feel a sharp gust of cold wind falling on his face. Pa! A crisp sound of a slap. Everyone could only see an afterimage flying backward at high speed. Soon after, it heavily smashed into a drum on a high platform not far away. Rumble. The wooden high platform and drum shattered with a loud bang. Dust and smoke billowed everywhere. Wood splinters flew everywhere. That figure fell on the broken wood, crying out in pain. Around them, sounds of people sucking in cold breaths sounded out. Good hit. A little bitch like her who doesn't have any ability but still wants to use her status to speak rudely deserves to be hit. Sun Yutong, Yan Zhenfei and the other guards of the Palace of Darkness also walked over. As soon as Sun Yutong's voice fell, he then heard the sweet laughter of a young girl. Miss Sun is right, he does deserve to be beaten. This voice Sun Yutong's expression froze. His eyes quickly looked in the direction of the laughter. After the profound qi dispersed, a young girl dressed in red looked at her with a light smile. And standing behind that girl was none other than Miao Yi, who had been slapped by Plum just now. No, wasn't Miao Yi sent flying by May's slap? What about May? After the crowd saw Miao Yi behind Yi Qing Luo, he suddenly seemed to understand something. One by one, they quickly turned their eyes to the collapsed high platform and the beating of the drums. When the dust settled, the figure lying on the ground was revealed, trembling non-stop. Her thin and elegant dress hung loosely on her body. It revealed a red undergarment embroidered with peonies. Her fair skin had an obvious curve to it, big and soft. Together with the beauty of the peony, it makes one's blood swell. The eyes of many men in the crowd almost emitted the light of wolves. The ladies' attention naturally wouldn't be on these. They clearly saw that on May's delicate and beautiful face, there was a bright red palm print, which was obvious. Yiqing Luo raised her hand lazily, her slender fingers gently stroked her palm. Chapter 2744. How could you? Sun Yutong was startled. Thinking back to what she had just said, her face turned deathly pale. She hurriedly looked in May's direction and eagerly tried to explain. Sister May, I'm not talking about you. It's her. What's the point of explaining all that to her? Yan Zhenfei tugged on Sun Yutong's arm in exasperation. Being humiliated like this in front of so many people. You've really thrown this envoy's face away. Saying that, she didn't even bother to take a look at Plum as she walked towards Yiqing Luo directly. Yan Zhenfei's steps were slow. In everyone's eyes, it felt like every step Yan Zhenfei took was like an invisible mountain pressing down on her. It was so heavy that they couldn't breathe. The surrounding guests' reverence towards Yan Zhenfei, and the palace of gloomy darkness instantly surged. As expected of the emissary of the Abyss Palace. His aura was so oppressive. However, on Yiqing Luo's face, there wasn't a single ripple of emotions. Her eyes were calm, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. Yan Zhenfei stopped in front of Yiqing Luo. Under the veil, the pair of eyes seemed as though they were dipped in poison as they stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Miss Yi, under my eyes, you dare to hit my people, don't tell me. Don't put my palace of darkness in your eyes? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as the ridicule in her eyes deepened. Sure enough, it was as she had guessed. Yan Zhenfei had no real power in Gloomy Palace. She had to have a legitimate reason to make a move. A reason related to the Palace of Darkness. Otherwise, if Yan Zhenfei casually made a move on her, she would definitely die. The Palace of Darkness probably wouldn't stand up for him. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she scoffed. Secluded palace? She chuckled and murmured those 3 words. Soon after, she raised her charming eyes. Her face still hung with her evil smile. That's right. I really don't care about the Palace of Darkness. And I don't care about you, the so-called messenger of the Palace of Darkness. Her voice was soft. Her tone was also very gentle. He did not have any extra emotions. However, the crowd could feel that it was a feeling of extreme disdain. Yan Zhenfei's eyes instantly turned black. She gritted her teeth and said, Yi Luo, do you still think that you have His Majesty to back you up? Let me tell you, in less than half a month, the secluded Darkness Palace will become the #1 palace in the Nirvana realm. When Dizun was mentioned, Yan Zhenfei's eyes flashed. Her vision went past Yiqing Luo and fell onto the tall and handsome man behind Yiqing Luo, who looked like a deity. The man was wearing a mask that covered half of his face. But in terms of his aura, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Even though the man was just standing there, he exuded an aura of a monarch descending from the heavens. Compared to the people he met in the Abyss Palace, he was much stronger. This person looked even more mesmerizing. Such an outstanding man. How could I become the subject of that slut Yi Luo? Yan Zhenfei suppressed the jealousy in her eyes and continued maliciously. Oh right. I forgot that you still have the Castle Master of Death God Castle as your backing. Yan Zhenfei deliberately raised her voice. So much so that the guests who were standing nearer to them all heard what Yan Zhenfei said. Immediately, it exploded into an uproar. Death God Castle Master? Zhu Wuxian? That unapproachable, mysterious and unfathomable Zhu Wuxian? That iceberg-like man was Yi Luo's backing. Chapter 2745. Which meant to say, Yi Luo not only seduced the overlord, he also hooked up with this mysterious nobleman, and even offended Death God Castle's castle lord? Every single one of them were characters who could shake the entire Nirvana realm if they stood out. All of them had been hooked up by Yi Luo? This Yi Luo, what ability did he have? To be able to attract so many noble and outstanding men? Everyone's gazes towards Yiqing Luo were filled with shock and disdain. Yen Zhenfei gave a satisfied cold smile. After her face was covered by the veil, only her two eyes were revealed, and the emotions it revealed were especially obvious. Yen Zhenfei's gaze fell onto Dmo Xian. That young master, you probably don't know what kind of person the lady in front of you is? Before you, she had climbed onto the Overlord's bed. Moreover, to be able to make Death God Castle's Castle Lord personally say she's mine. Now she's so intimate with you. She paused as her beautiful eyes curved and her voice revealed a trace of bewitchment. She got close to you, just to cling on to your power. Don't be used by her. Yen Zhenfei's words made the surrounding guests even more heated discussions, especially those ladies who were jealous of Yi Luo for having 3 outstanding men. The words that came out of their mouths were simply unbearable to listen to. All of them were fanning the flames, just to infuriate the new sugar daddy that Yi Luo had hooked up with. Then to see Yi Luo being abandoned by the sugar daddy in front of everyone. But the crowd's discussions and Yen Zhenfei's intentional bewitchment words didn't make the main character in their mouths change her expression at all. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as her smile was very shallow, not reaching her eyes. Following that, her pink lips moved slightly as she spat out a few words. Yen Zhen. Before she could finish her words, Yen Zhenfei's complacent smile instantly dissipated as her expression turned sinister. Shut up. You shut up for this envoy. The clamorous discussion stopped abruptly. No one understood why the envoy from Gloomy Palace suddenly flew into a rage. Yen Zhenfei's chest was heaving up and down. Apparently she was extremely angry. Yiqing Luo gave a melodious chuckle. Miss Yen's secluded Darkness Palace has been manipulating public opinion recently, creating numerous rumors about me, splashing dirty water on me. Now he even did not hesitate to smear my name at the Miao Tribe Saintess selection ceremony. I'm kind-hearted and don't intend to bicker with you. However, my character is that I can't tolerate anyone bullying the people I care about. There was a hint of laughter in her voice. His tone was also light and indifferent, without the slightest fluctuation. This is my fiancé. Miss Yen is smearing my feelings for my fiancé. This really makes me very curious about Miss Yen's goal. Yiqing Luo paused for a moment, as the corners of her eyes rose into a narrow arc. Could it be that Miss Yen has taken a fancy to my fiancé, and is trying to sow discord between me and my fiancé, so as to take the opportunity to rise up? Yen Zhenfei's hands under her sleeves clenched into fists. The surrounding guests were once again in an uproar because of Yiqing Luo's words. What did Yi Luo mean? Her dark deeds were intentionally led by secluded Darkness Palace? A person's heart was easily swayed by different opinions. At this moment, Yi Luo's words made them start to guess if Yi Luo's words were true or not. Sun Yutong saw the situation going out of control once again, as she anxiously looked towards Yen Zhenfei. Chapter 2746. Sun Yutong was anxious as she clenched her teeth. Yi Luo, what you said is ridiculous. Would the Palace of Darkness target you to manipulate the rumors and public opinion? Who do you think you are? Immediately following that, she quickly continued. Furthermore, why are there so many rumors surrounding you? Isn't it because there's a problem with your character? It's a fact that you've been abandoned by the Overlord. It's also a fact that you've brought your so-called fiancé here to show off. You've just been abandoned by the Overlord for a short period of time, and you've already found your next family, even calling him fiancé. If this isn't fickle, then what is? Sun Yutong's words made the surrounding guests nod their heads in agreement. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a faint cold arc, as though she was smiling but it didn't reach her eyes. Her brows were filled with a deathly stillness. That's right, I'm also very curious. Why would the Palace of Darkness, which sounds like it's going to boast to the heavens, purposely target a weak lady like me, using such a despicable method? Yiqing Luo touched her chin in puzzlement as she raised her eyes to look at Yen Zhenfei. Miss Yen, what do you think? That word, Yen, had just left her mouth. Yen Zhenfei's body suddenly stiffened. After Yiqing Luo's words ended, Yen Zhenfei's face under the veil was covered in a haze. Damned slut. Yi Luo thought that she had caught hold of her weakness, so she could throw her weight around in front of her? and even tried to use this secret to threaten her. Heh. She would absolutely not give Yi Luo a chance to reveal the secret. The intense murderous intent disappeared in a flash. Yan Zhenfei's brows had already regained her arrogance. Before today, I don't even know you. The Palace of Darkness will absolutely not do such a disgraceful thing. Yiqing Luo burst out laughing when she heard that. Then, Miss Yan, can you be sure that the people around you won't make use of the Palace of Darkness to manipulate the public opinion? As she was laughing, her gaze fell onto Mei, who was standing up in a sorry state, frantically tidying herself up. Yan Zhenfei's gaze also looked over. Instantly her face turned slightly pale. Her tightly clenched fingers uncontrollably tightened. Yiqing Luo continued to smile. After all, it's not the first time that Miss Yan has been treated as a puppet, isn't it? Yan Zhenfei trembled with anger. Their conversation wasn't soft at all. The surrounding guests saw that Yan Zhenfei didn't refute Yiqing Luo's guess. All of them couldn't help but look at Mei. They were not fools. Even if it was easy to waver, it wasn't without reason. After all, Yiqing Luo had been abandoned by the Overlord. The news spread like wildfire in the Northern Waves continent for almost a month. If it wasn't for someone deliberately guiding him from the back, this matter would definitely not be a hot topic until now. Today, Yan Zhenfei's tacit agreement had verified Yiqing Luo's words. The rumors and public opinion were related to the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Yiqing Luo continued to smile. As for whether there's any problem with my character, this isn't something for Miss Yan and Miss Sun to worry about. Sun Yutong's face paled a few shades at this moment. After meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, instinctively, she hid behind Yan Zhenfei. Yan Zhenfei clenched her fists tightly as her face under the veil turned green and red. Yi Luo, you're really great. Chapter 2747. Bang. Yiqing Luo suddenly moved, and her figure was already standing in front of Yan Zhenfei. She grabbed Yan Zhenfei's wrist. It was extremely fast. It was so fast that no one could see it clearly. Yiqing Luo had already pulled Yan Zhenfei and pressed her behind, onto the flagpole which represented the Miao tribe. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with malice as she lowered her body, as though she would pinch Yan Zhenfei to death in the next moment. Yan Zhenfei, you'd better dispel this thought. If you dare to touch them, your good days will come to an end. Yiqing Luo's voice was very low. Only the two of them could hear it. Yan Zhenfei was frightened, her lips trembling. She didn't want to admit her fear of Yi Luo, but he couldn't deny it. Just now, Yi Luo's voice sounded like an Azura from the depths of hell. At this moment, Yan Zhenfei was stunned. In her mind, Yiqing Luo's devastatingly beautiful face appeared, facing her, revealing a bloodthirsty cold smile. Yan Zhenfei's heart trembled. His body could not stop trembling. Ever since he became the emissary of the Palace of Darkness, it had been a long time since Yan Zhenfei had felt so helpless and terrified. She pursed her lips unwillingly as her back leaned against that flagpole, which wasn't considered thick. Being suppressed by Yiqing Luo, that flagpole was almost embedded into her flesh. It hurt against her back. Do you understand? That enchanting voice drifted into his ears again. Yan Zhenfei's lips trembled, and she was about to agree. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced around at the countless onlookers. He swallowed the words of begging for mercy that were at the tip of his tongue. Originally, Yan Zhenfei was thinking of borrowing the power of public opinion, using her identity as the Palace of Darkness's envoy, to give Yiqing Luo a show of strength. At least he could take revenge for the grievances he had suffered in Yiqing Luo's hands. All the guests here wanted to build a relationship with her Palace of Darkness. As long as she asked, these guests would definitely make Yi Luo and the others feel suffocated. In the end, he retreated in defeat. Everything had clearly been set up. But now she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He couldn't just beg for mercy like this. He could not allow himself to be overwhelmed by Yi Luo's aura. She was the emissary of the Palace of Gloom. She represented the image of the gloomy palace. If she retreated, Umbra Palace would become a laughing stock. The Palace of Darkness would definitely not let her off so easily. Thinking of such a harem, Yan Zhenfei held her breath. No matter how afraid she was of Yi Luo, she couldn't compare to the terror of Gloomy Palace. She suppressed the fear in her heart and tried her best to look calm. Yi Luo, do you care about those people that much? Don't tell me you don't know. That group of people are the dogs raised by the main character, Yi Luo. Night Luo. This name was not unfamiliar to the surrounding guests. After all, it was related to Yi Luo's deeds. The news had already spread throughout the streets and alleys of the Nirvana realm. Everyone was in an uproar. What did this have to do with Yi Luo? Following that, he heard Yin Zhenfei's ridiculing voice ringing. Have you imitated Yi Luo for too long that you're too immersed in your character? Now even Yi Luo's dog also wants to learn from Yi Luo, protecting it? Pa. A slap landed on Yin Zhenfei's face. Yi Luo used brute force as the expression on her face was cold and her eyes were filled with a chilly glint. Only scum like you who likes to be a dog will think that everyone you meet is a dog. Chapter 2748. The people she cared about were her reverse scale. She couldn't tolerate anyone saying a bad word about her. Especially, she was comparing her brother to a dog. This slap was thrown with extreme force. Even though Yin Zhenfei was wearing a veil, it wasn't difficult to tell that her face was already red and swollen. You! How dare you! Sun Yutong's eyes widened in shock when she saw that. Someone actually dared to hit Sister Yen? Sister Yen was the envoy of Abyss Palace. That Yi Luo, wasn't he afraid of Abyss Palace's revenge? How dare I? Yi Luo's brows rose as she looked at her with an evil smile. This is called being presumptuous? You haven't seen anything more presumptuous. Sun Yutong was frightened by her gaze as she retreated a few steps. Just at this moment, not knowing when, Mei had already dashed over and pounced towards Yi Luo with all her might. She didn't care about her messy appearance as her entire body pounced towards Yi Luo, who was dragging Yin Zhenfei. Following that, Mei turned her head around and shouted sternly at the row of Abyss Palace's guards behind her. What are you all still in a daze for? Seeing your own master being humiliated by a little slut, yet you still don't know how to take action. As she was saying that, Mei used her body to separate the distance between Yin Zhenfei and Yi Luo. Following that, she exerted strength as both her hands wrapped tightly towards Yi Luo. Yin Zhenfei took the opportunity to take a step back, retreating out of Yi Luo's attack range. Her body swayed unsteadily. Sun Yutong immediately went up to support her as she asked softly, Sister Yen, are you all right? Yin Zhenfei grabbed Sun Yutong's arm tightly as she stabilized her body. Her eyes were gloomy as she didn't take a look at Sun Yutong, but stared straight at Yi Luo's direction. Mei's sudden attack was out of Yi Luo's expectations. Yi Luo didn't manage to react in time as she was pounced on by Mei's arms. His entire person was pushed back a few steps. Yi Luo frowned as she raised her hand and locked onto Mei's wrist, trying to pull her away. Mei clenched her teeth tightly as she increased her strength. She continued to shout sternly, Envoy Yen, quick! Order your guards to attack. Yin Zhenfei was startled. She instinctively looked towards the dozen or so guards wearing black robes with the word, You embroidered on their chests and sleeves. She pursed her lips and her eyes flickered. She seemed to understand Plum's meaning, and became determined. You guys, why don't you go and bring that little bitch who doesn't respect the Palace of Darkness out? The dozen guards shifted their gazes to Yin Zhenfei in unison. Yin Zhenfei's face was stiff as she sneered. If Gloomy Palace's reputation is damaged, can you bear the responsibility? The dozen or so guards trembled when they heard this. Following that, he speedily headed towards Yi Luo's direction. A smug sneer flashed across Yin Zhenfei's eyes. The minute those guards struck, Yi Luo felt the surrounding air forming an extremely strong pressure. Her expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to dodge the incoming pressure, a voice suddenly rang out. His waist was tightly wrapped by Mei's hands. Let go! Yi Luo's slender brows creased as she forcefully tried to pry Mei's hands away. Mei's beautiful and charming face had already become distorted. Her voice was hoarse as she couldn't help but laugh coldly. Yi Luo, as long as I capture you, I still have a chance. You absolutely cannot snatch away what belongs to me. Chapter 2749. The matter of Mei making use of Yin Zhenfei was pointed out clearly by Yiqing Luo, and also successfully sowed discord between her and Yin Zhenfei. If Mei still wanted to have a place in front of Yin Zhenfei, this was indeed Mei's only chance. Risking her life, using her own body, to save Yin Zhenfei, and using this, to let Yin Zhenfei issue an order to the Palace of Darkness's guards, to establish her own position. As long as the Palace of Darkness's guards made a move, earlier Yin Zhenfei's wretched state would be covered up. Everyone would only remember Palace of Darkness's power and power. She had to admit that this young lady called Mei was rather intelligent. Yiqing Luo's eyes dimmed as her gaze landed on Mei's open collar, revealing that round bosom. The smile on her lips turned colder by several degrees. Miss Mei, I don't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Her voice was like a demonic charm, making one aghast. Mei's heart suddenly constricted fiercely, only to hear a kacha sound of bones breaking. Mei's expression instantly turned ghastly pale. The hands which were on Yiqing Luo's body drooped down weakly. At the same time, Yiqing Luo raised her leg as she kicked Mei's abdomen fiercely. Mei's body flew towards the direction where the guards came from. Those 10 over guards were swift, and their abilities were unfathomable. Just at the instance when Mei leapt away, 10 over figures turned into numerous remnant images. Naked eyes were unable to capture them. Those 10 over guards had already appeared around Yiqing Luo, wrapping Yiqing Luo within, and that Mei who originally flew towards the guards directly rolled onto the ground. Sister Mei. Sun Yutong saw Mei rolling several times on the ground, as she cried out involuntarily. She was about to walk towards Mei's direction, but she thought of something, as her footsteps paused slightly, as she hesitated. Yin Zhenfei shot a glance at Mei, as her eyes dimmed, as an unknown emotion surged. You go over. Sun Yutong's eyes shone as she speedily jogged towards Mei. Mei's internal organs felt a tearing pain from the fall. Large mouthfuls of blood gushed out from her mouth, but her hands were broken by Yiqing Luo, and the slightest movement would cause a heart-wrenching pain. Sister Mei. Sun Yutong immediately squatted down beside her, and fed the pill in her hand into Mei's mouth. Plum's eyes were lifeless and unfocused. After a long while, he finally saw Sun Yutong clearly. A glimmer of light gradually appeared in her eyes. His body was also trembling slightly. Her lips moved as she silently spat out a few words. Why Messenger Yan? Forgive me. Sister Mei, don't talk. Take a rest first. Sun Yutong carefully supported Mei's head and said in a low voice, Big Sister Yan allowed me to come and bring you medicine. The light in Mei's eyes grew brighter. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't muster up any strength. Little by little, her heart felt at ease. Fortunately, she succeeded. As long as he could stand firmly by Yin Feifei's side, she would definitely be able to climb over Yin Feifei's head with her own abilities. For his own future. In order to take back what belonged to her, she had to stay calm. The Sacred Maiden Grand Ceremony's public square had mysteriously turned into a battlefield. However, the surrounding crowd didn't dare to open their mouths to stop her. Chapter 2750. Second, what should we do? Fourth Elder Miao looked at Elder Miao anxiously. Second Elder Miao's expression was solemn as he shook his head. No one can stop the people from the Palace of Darkness from attacking. Are we just going to let them hit us? Fourth Elder Miao frowned. If they continue to fight, not only will they scare the guests who are rushing over, it will also delay the Saintess selection. The Palace of Darkness. Second Elder Miao's gaze fell on the young lady who was surrounded by a dozen guards. We can't stop them. Now, why not take the opportunity to see how powerful the Palace of Darkness is? And he paused, his gaze deepening. That young lady who has already entered the 9th level of the Earth Profound Realm at such a young age, how much potential does she have? Fourth Elder Miao paused, carefully considering Second Elder Miao's words. Suddenly, Fourth Elder Miao felt a weight on his shoulder. A huge palm pressed down heavily. Then he heard a hurried voice from behind him. What do you mean, see the power of the Palace of Darkness? See Yi Luo's potential? She was invited to participate in the Saintess selection of the Miao tribe. Now that she is in danger, as the host, this is your attitude. The man's voice was very loud. In this silent and solemn atmosphere, it was extremely clear. Everyone turned their gazes toward Zhang Xian. Even Yan Zhenfei's gaze shifted over. Young Lord Gu. Second Elder Miao saw the person's face and called out in a low voice. Then he said, Young Lord Gu, it's better if you don't interfere in this matter. This person was Gu Jingyu. His handsome face was filled with anger at this moment. He pressed one hand on Fourth Elder Miao's body, and the other on Second Elder Miao's body. If I don't interfere, then, are the two elders not going to interfere? Letting our guests be treated like this in our own territory. Is this how the Miao tribe treats their guests? Gu Jingyu's voice was filled with anger. You've broadened my horizons. Second Elder Miao's face was ashen. Most of the guests around them had noticed the commotion on their side. Second Elder Miao's face darkened. If they interfered, they would definitely offend the Palace of Darkness. The current Miao tribe was definitely no match for the Palace of Darkness. If he didn't intervene, that also confirmed Gu Jingyu's words. The guests who were invited couldn't even guarantee the safety of the guests in their own territory. The reputation of the Miao tribe would definitely be ruined. Moreover, seeing how much Gu Jingyu cared about Yi Luo, something happened to Yi Luo in the Miao tribe. Gu Jingyu would never let the Miao people off. It was a dilemma. The few elders of the Miao tribe present were all unable to open their mouths to reply. Just then, Yan Zhenfei's arrogant and contemptuous voice rang out unhurriedly. What is the relationship between young sect master Gu and Miss Yi? Why are you so concerned about Miss Ye's matter? Gu Jingyu's sullen expression immediately froze. Yan Zhenfei caught this and her smile grew. She deliberately glanced at the tall and slender figure standing beside Yan Xiaoyi and the rest. He smiled meaningfully. Young Lord Gu, look, Lady Ye's fiancé didn't say anything, but why are you so agitated? Chapter 2751. You. What nonsense are you sprouting? Gu Jingyu's face instantly flushed red. His hands instinctively retracted back from the two Miao clan elders. Envoy Yan I am merely standing on the standpoint of a friend to discuss this matter. But you said it in such a vile manner. What intentions do you have? Gu Jingyu was after all the young sect master of Gu Feng sect. His brain worked extremely fast. The expression on his face gradually revealed a warning and cold expression. Invisibly, a thick aura surged from his surroundings. While his long robe, the wind billows flapping noisily. This powerful aura made Yan Zhenfei's expression change slightly. All the guards had already surrounded Yi Qingluo's surroundings. There was no one else protecting her. If Gu Jingyu really made a move on her. Yan Zhenfei pursed her lips tightly and laughed loudly. Whether it's a friend or some other unspeakable relationship, young sect master Gu knows clearly in his heart. But this envoy will give young sect master Gu a piece of advice. Miss Ye's ability to seduce men is not small. The men beside her are not just you. Saying that, she flicked her sleeves and turned towards the direction of Sun Yutong and Mei, who was undergoing treatment, as she walked over. Yan Zhenfei's sentence. It indeed gave one a lot of room for imagination. Furthermore, no matter how Gu Jingyu explained, it would inevitably make others suspicious of his relationship with Yi Luo. Unless Gu Jingyu no longer spoke up for Yi Luo, or even worse, become enemies with Yi Luo. Then there was a possibility to change everyone's thoughts. After all, a man and a woman, how could they be friends? On the other side, Yi Qingluo was surrounded by those 10 over-secluded palace's guards, trapping her within. Those guards' profound chi was chilly, like an icy cold venomous snake, winding around Yi Qingluo bit by bit. This feeling made Yi Qingluo's slender brows crease tightly. She knew that this group of secluded palace's guards were not ordinary guards. But at this moment, they had yet to make a move against them. Yi Qingluo had already deeply felt the strangeness of these people. If it was an ordinary person, How could they possibly emit such chilly profound chi? Simply, like a dead person, emitting that extremely rotten, dense aura of death. Yiqing Luo was frightened by this thought of hers. She focused her gaze and carefully sized up the guards around her. However, he did not find anything strange. The guards of the Abyss Palace exchanged glances with one another. Without any hesitation, they made their move. More than 10 figures moved almost at the same time. Everyone could only see countless afterimages flitting through the air. As for the red figure that was surrounded, it was instantly engulfed. There was no longer any sign of life. The surrounding guests all gasped in astonishment. They had just witnessed Yi Luo's strength. Moreover, Master Gue Wu had personally admitted that he was a 9th-grade Earth Profound Realm Profound practitioner. But, under the siege of the dozen or so guards of the Palace of Darkness, he couldn't even hold on for a breath of time. One could see how powerful the Palace of Gloomy Darkness was. What a pity for that genius girl. At the instance when Yiqing Luo's red figure completely disappeared from everyone's eyes, Gu Jingyu's body suddenly tensed up. His eyes widened as he looked in disbelief at the rolling sand and dust, the ripple-like profound energy, and that swaying in the air, totally unable to see the figure's afterimage. His heart seemed to be suppressed by something, so much that he was unable to breathe. Miss Yi, that bright and beautiful, flamboyant and reckless young lady. Chapter 2752. Gu Jingyu's body stiffened bit by bit. Bit by bit, from a slight tremble, it gradually became bigger and bigger. His heart was empty. His suppressed emotions made his nose feel a little sour. Boundless anger surged from his chest. At this moment, his mind was completely blank. His mind was filled with Yi Luo's smile and frown. Obviously, they had only met a few times. Why did he have such deep feelings for her? So deep that even he himself couldn't believe it. It was as though his thoughts were controlling his body. Gu Jingyu strode towards Di Emotien's direction. He grabbed Di Emotien's sleeve, baring his teeth and glaring at him. His entire face was contorted in anger. His eyes were red and the gentleness was long gone. Aren't you Yi Luo's fiancé? Why didn't you save her? Why didn't you stop him? Gu Jingyu's sudden action made the surrounding guests believe in Yan Zhenfei's words. Yan Xiaoyi heard the surrounding guests' discussion. She frowned and was about to step forward to stop Gu Jingyu. The tall and slender man gently flicked the sleeve of his robe that was being pulled. In an instant, an invisible pressure came pouring down. The air around him seemed to be rioting at this moment. Gu Jingyu's hand had just touched Di Emotian, but it was pushed away by this invisible wave. Gu Jingyu staggered for a while, and almost fell to the ground. He didn't hurry to steady himself but continued to stare at Di Emotian with bloodshot eyes. His voice was hoarse. You're not fit to be Yi Luo's fiancé. If it's me, I won't bear to let her suffer any harm. Young sect master Gu. Yan Xiaoyi's face turned pale when she heard Gu Jingyu's words. She quickly berated him sternly. Young sect master Gu, please conduct yourself with dignity. A Luo and young sect master Gu are not related at all. Don't tell me you're trying to take the opportunity to ruin A Luo's reputation by saying such misleading words. Gu Jingyu's eyes lit up for a moment. He stared blankly for a moment and lowered his eyes as he spoke in a hoarse voice. I'm just feeling indignant for Yi Luo. The square was deathly silent. The guests even stopped talking. What if young sect master Gu and Miss Yi didn't have an affair? They wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell. Young sect master Gu's feelings for Miss Yi were very deep. Looks like emissary Yin was right. Yi Luo was a promiscuous woman who could sleep with any man. Every outstanding man wanted to get close to her and become her backer. The reactions of the guests and the red figure that disappeared among the guards of the Palace of Darkness. This caused the smile on Yan Zhenfei's face to deepen. Although she was smiling, her eyes were terrifyingly sinister. He could almost see her distorted facial features under the veil. Damn little slut. A counterfeit dared to strut around in front of her, the emissary of the Palace of Darkness. And he even tried to threaten her with her weakness? Now she wanted to see if that fake still had any life left to threaten her. Everyone in the world who knew her identity deserved to die. All of them must die. Now a fake had died. Next was Yan Xiaoyi, her dear sister. Yan Zhenfei had already constructed a beautiful picture of the future in her mind. Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, a voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. Suddenly, a deep, low, and hoarse voice rang out clearly in this silent atmosphere. Chapter 2753. Almost instinctively, the crowd looked in the direction of the voice respectfully. The man wearing half a mask, with a pair of black inky eyes, was deep and cold, without a single ripple. Just a gaze. It stunned the entire crowd. This was the aura of a real strong man. Compared to the pretentious aura of the secluded palace, it made people submit from the bottom of their hearts. This man, who was he? Countless people's hearts raised this doubt. Yan Zhenfei on the other side also had her eyes glued on Dmo Xian. In her eyes, there was an unconcealable yearning. Such a noble and powerful man. Only he could be worthy of her. This man was hers. Was hers. It could be said that all the ladies present had the same thought in their minds. They wanted to take him for themselves. But they also felt that he was sacred and noble, unattainable. At this moment, the man wearing half a mask opened his mouth again. His voice was bone-chilling. If Lil Luo can't defeat those people, I will naturally take action. His gaze slowly fell on Gu Jingyu. The icy cold, like December's frost, covered Gu Jingyu's body. Dmo Xian continued. In this world, no one can hurt Lil Luo, or not even myself can't. His words ended. Both eyes had already returned to the place where they were surrounded by those 10 guards. Just for a moment, the man's icy cold gaze was like the blooming of spring flowers. The smooth lines of his clean chin also at this moment softened. Such a huge contrast made everyone's reverence towards Dmo Xian intensified. And when Gu Jingyu, Yan Zhenfei and the rest heard Dmo Xian's first sentence, their expressions were different. Gu Jingyu was stunned at first. His face, which was filled with anger, gradually calmed down. He stared blankly at the direction Dmo Xian was looking at. This man's meaning was, he didn't make a move. Because Yi Luo was fine? Yi Luo. Fine. Yan Zhenfei's face also darkened. After realizing Dmo Xian's words, she suddenly reacted to something. She immediately shouted sternly, "Come back! You bunch of trash! Come and protect this messenger!" A light and melodious laughter rang in Yan Zhenfei's ears. It was a smile that seemed to have come from hell. Yan Zhenfei's body froze. It's too late. That laughter was softly spitting out words. The next moment, Yan Zhenfei felt a cold and soft finger around her neck. His nails were as sharp as blades. It was as if it could easily cut through her skin. That is, it was the girl in red who had been surrounded and attacked by more than 10 guards of the Palace of Darkness, and had been engulfed. When did she rush in front of Emissary Yan? What incredible speed! To be able to escape from such a tight encirclement, and even subdue the emissary of the Palace of Darkness. The crowd had once again refreshed their view of Yiqing Luo's ability. When did you? Yan Zhenfei's throat was clutched and it was difficult for her to speak. Yiqing Luo laughed beside her ear. Just now. There was a faint smile on her face. It was not the smug smile he had after escaping the encirclement of the guards. Nor was it the vengeful smile he had when he choked Yan Zhenfei. Chapter 2754. The dozen or so guards were also stunned at this moment. They turned their heads in unison and looked at Yan Zhenfei, whose neck was being strangled. There was no expression on their faces, but they didn't continue to attack. They lined up in a row, facing Yiqing Luo's direction. They were like a dozen puppets, waiting for the final order. Yan Zhenfei was so frightened by Yiqing Luo that her entire body was trembling. A suffocating pain came from her neck, causing her to be filled with the desire to live. Save me! Save me! 10 guards stood at their original spots. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as her gaze swept past those expressionless faces in front of her. A guess in the bottom of her heart slowly formed. She pursed her lips and moved her fingers slightly on Yan Zhenfei's neck. Following that, her lips curled as a bloodthirsty smile appeared in her eyes. She lowered her head and leaned close to Yan Zhenfei's ear as she whispered softly, "Looks like, as an envoy you're a failure." You're spouting rubbish," Yan Zhenfei retorted with difficulty. "I'm the envoy of the Palace of Darkness. You kill me. If you kill me, they will not let you off." Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she was interested. "Then why don't we try?" Just nice, she could try her guess. Yi Qingluo grabbed Yan Zhenfei's neck as she raised her eyes and smiled at the row of guards in front of her. "You people from the Palace of Darkness are merely so. You've been spreading it so mysteriously, even saying that you want to surpass the Imperial Palace. From what I see, you're not even half of the Imperial Palace." There was a hint of laughter in her voice. Following that, she tilted her head and blinked her long eyelashes as she gave an innocent smile. "Originally, on account that we're old acquaintances. Plus today, it's the Miao tribe's Saintess's selection ceremony. I didn't intend to disgrace you, such a pity." She intentionally paused for a moment. Her voice was mixed with a treacherous chill. "If you don't do it, you won't die. Since Envoy Yan loves to do it, then I'll fulfill your wish. Let you and your Palace of Darkness scram from heaven to hell." Yi Qingluo didn't intentionally control her volume for the first few sentences. He lowered his voice when he said the last sentence. The cold and deep voice was like a deadly lock, seeping into Yan Zhenfei's heart bit by bit. Almost reflexively, Yan Zhenfei screamed out, her face pale. The surrounding guests were in an uproar again. Could it be that Envoy Yan and Yi Luo were old acquaintances? An old acquaintance? Emissary Yan was from the upper realm. In other words, this Yi Luo was also from the upper realm? No wonder he had such a high cultivation at such a young age. Only those godlike people from the upper realm could be so perverted. After knowing that Yi Luo was from the three upper realms, everyone's attitude immediately changed. Yi Luo was right. From the beginning to the end, it was Yan Feifei who used the power of the Palace of Darkness to show off and threaten Elder Miao, forcing Yi Luo and the others, who were sitting in the first row, to move to the last row. If not for Yan Feifei's provocation, Yan Feifei would not have been kicked to the bench and ended up in this situation. If he didn't do it, he wouldn't die. The new image was very appropriate. Yi Luo. Squatting by the side, the pale-faced Sun Yutong grabbed Mei's robes in fear. Chapter 2755. All right, it's not impossible to let her go. Yi Qingluo replied straightforwardly as her brows were filled with smiles. She raised her brows and the long arc at the corner of her eyes made her look rather evil. Sun Yutong was stunned as she didn't expect Yi Qingluo to be so easygoing. What do you want to do?" Yi Qingluo only smiled as she lowered her eyes to look at Yan Zhenfei, who was wearing a veil, but it was unable to conceal her pale face as she asked with a smile, "Does Messenger Yan want to live?" Yes. She naturally wanted to live. Who didn't want to live? She had put in so much effort in order to live on, even to the extent of betraying her everything. How could she possibly not want to live? But Yan Zhenfei was very clear. Yi Qingluo would not let her live. At least, she wouldn't let her live easily, no matter how anxious she was. Yan Zhenfei finally opened her eyes wide as she tried her best to look at her calmly. "Your motive?" Yi Qingluo raised her brows as she looked at the direction of those guards. "Order them to leave the Miao tribe." Yan Zhenfei's eyes flashed as her body shuddered slightly. She bit her lips tightly. "No." "Oh." Yi Qingluo narrowed her eyes as she smiled. As she smiled, her slender fingers tightened. Yi Qingluo was smiling. Her smile was gentle and her eyes were calm. Totally not like someone who was using her hands to kill someone. But from Yan Zhenfei's struggling strength and that voice which could no longer speak. It had all been verified. Yi Qingluo really wanted to kill Yan Zhenfei. No. Sun Yutong instantly panicked. The Misty Palace's messenger was her only reliance now. If Yan Zhenfei died, who would bear the Misty Palace's anger? Yi Luo? No. Yi Luo was not only the person beside her, he was respected and powerful. Yi Luo herself was so powerful that no one could fathom her strength. Misty Palace would definitely take it out on the Sun family. No. Yiqing Luo actually loosened the strength of her fingers. After that, she smiled as she looked at Yin Junfei, who had just escaped death, panting miserably. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What does Messenger Yin think?" she asked with a light smile. Yin Junfei finally escaped the suffocating pain. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, Yin Junfei's body suddenly trembled. He wanted to speak, but he was afraid of the pain he had just experienced. But Yiqing Luo didn't give Yin Junfei any time to hesitate. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved. "Why? Are you still unwilling to withdraw your guards?" She clicked her tongue and glanced at the guards who were standing as straight as a ramrod. Soon after, she shook her head and said, "You are really a good-for-nothing envoy. Even your own subordinates are unwilling to save you. So even if you leave these guards in the Miao tribe, what's the point?" Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't soft. The guests also pricked up their ears, wishing they could hear the gossip clearly. After hearing Yiqing Luo's words, the guests were in an uproar. Speaking of which, this emissary from the Palace of Darkness seems a little strange. Yes. I feel that the guards of the Palace of Darkness don't care about her life at all. How can a guard ignore his master's life like this? I realized something was wrong a long time ago, but I didn't dare to say it. Didn't you feel it? Right from the start, Messenger Yin couldn't order these guards around. It was until she brought out the reputation of the Palace of Darkness before these guards started to take action. It seemed that only Sun family's young miss, and that young miss may kept on flattering her. But those guards from the Palace of Darkness totally didn't treat her as their master. Chapter 2756. Listening to the guest discussions. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes in satisfaction. She had this idea in her mind. Didn't Yin Junfei like to bully others? Didn't she like to use her status as the Gloomy Palace's emissary to enjoy everyone's flattery? Didn't she like to be the center of attention? To be under one but above all? Then she would shatter Yin Junfei's beautiful dream. To let Yin Junfei fall from the high and mighty emissary of the upper realm. To become the scum of everyone's ridicule. Now Yiqing Luo could totally verify her guess. These Gloomy Palace's guards totally didn't listen to Yin Junfei's arrangements. It could also be said that Yin Junfei's status in Gloomy Palace, although her name sounded better than these guards, but her actual power wasn't comparable to these guards. This made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but think deeper. Yin Junfei originally followed Wolf Saint technique and left West Continent, which meant to say, Yin Junfei wanted to treat herself as the second Yi Qingqian. After getting close to Wolf Saint technique, dark forces, together with some other forces, built a Gloomy Palace. Yin Junfei was able to become the Gloomy Palace's emissary, swaggering around Nirvana Realm, recruiting cultivators for Nirvana Realm. It must be Wolf Saint technique's doing. However, Yin Junfei's actual power was just an undeserved reputation. Could it be further assumed that dark forces in Gloomy Palace only played a pivotal role? Yiqing Luo's gaze shot towards that side of the guards once again, as her eyes flickered slightly. These guards had some problems. Although currently, she wasn't sure what was wrong. But she could be sure. These guards were different from ordinary people. If these people were really Gloomy Palace's guards, the power behind this Gloomy Palace was probably hard to deal with. After confirming Yin Junfei's status in Gloomy Palace, Yiqing Luo also didn't have the intention to continue teasing Yin Junfei. Yin Junfei, you should feel lucky. Today is the day my brother Miao Yi takes part in the Sacred Maiden selection, so it's not suitable to see blood. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly as she let go of Yin Junfei's neck. Yin Junfei's body seemed to have lost all her energy as she fell limply onto the ground. Big Sister Yin. Sun Yutong was just about to go over. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she smiled and blocked her path. What I said is that I won't kill her today, but it doesn't mean that you can bring her away. She didn't want to let the tiger return to the mountain. Although Yin Junfei could only be considered a sickly cat at best. But no matter how sick the cat is, When it came to annoying people, it was quite annoying. Last time in the West Continent, letting Yen Zhenfei escape with the Wolf Saint technique was an accident. This time, Yen Zhenfei took the initiative to deliver herself. A cold intent flashed past Yiqing Luo's eyes, and following that, she looked towards a certain direction behind her. Xiaoyi, how about I leave this person to you? Yen Xiaoyi, who was called out, suddenly froze. Yen Xiaoyi's gaze landed on the battered woman who was panting heavily on the ground. Her hands gradually clenched into fists. All right. A word was spat out from her mouth with great force. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her vision shifted onto Qiao Jin, as she pouted her lips. Qiao Jin understood her meaning as he gently held Yen Xiaoyi's hand and said in a low voice, I'll bring her over, later Yi will help you trap her in the gu array. Saying that, Qiao Jin walked towards Yiqing Luo. He was about to bend down and lift up the battered woman on the ground. Suddenly, the hair by the side of his face suddenly floated messily. Chapter 2757. At the same time, a gust of raging wind suddenly rose, sweeping across the place where Qiao Jin was standing earlier. Boom boom boom. The deafening sound of the explosion reverberated through the air. A huge pit was formed on the ground. Dust billowed as it filled the surroundings. The ground also gave off a short period of tremors. If Qiao Jin hadn't avoided it earlier, Qiao Jin would definitely be buried in that huge pit by now. The horizon seemed to have been covered with a thick layer of ink in a split second. It was a patch of darkness, making one feel suffocated. The surrounding guests were stunned by the sudden change in the surroundings. What's going on? What's going on? Why did the weather suddenly change? Numerous terrified discussions resounded in the public square. The guests' hearts had an indescribable feeling of uneasiness, as it kept on surging. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she raised her eyes to look at the dark sky. As her pink lips pursed slightly, she looked at Qiao Jin and asked in a low voice, Are you hurt? No. Qiao Jin shook his head, as his expression was grave. They don't come with good intentions, be careful. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. She naturally felt the oppressive feeling from this surge of energy. Indeed, they didn't come with good intentions. Moreover, they were obviously here for her. She sunk her eyes, and between her eyes, there was an obscure glint. Yen Zhenfei has been brought away. Qiao Jin's gaze swept towards the place where Yen Zhenfei laid earlier. The dust dispersed. Indeed, Yen Zhenfei's figure was nowhere to be seen. Even Sun Yutong and Mei, who were not too far away, had also disappeared. The people from Secluded Palace are here. Qiao Jin immediately reacted. Following that, he instinctively turned around and speedily returned to Yen Xiaoyi's side, as he hugged her shoulders tightly, in a protective posture. Secluded Palace. Yen Xiaoyi's brows creased tightly as she raised her head and looked at the sky full of thick ink. She's really willing to be in cahoots with the devil for power now. Do you still mind? Qiao Jin asked in a low voice. Mind. Yen Xiaoyi's eyes had a moment of chaos. After some time, her lips twitched as she gave a low laugh. Don't mind, I've never asked for family, so why would I mind? Only, I find it rather amusing. The Yen family had bet all their treasures on Yen Zhenfei. He was even willing to stand on the side of the dark forces for Yen Zhenfei, abandoning the place he grew up in to help the dark forces invade the Western continent. Now, Yen Zhenfei didn't just abandon the Yen family. He even sold his soul. If the Yen family knew that the Yen family would end up like this, would he still value Yen Zhenfei without any hesitation back then? She chuckled. As she smiled, the expression on her face returned to her usual calmness. All of this had nothing to do with her. The current her only needed Qiao Jin, Yiqing Luo and the other brothers, and that was enough. Just as the two of them were talking, suddenly, the row of guards from the Palace of Darkness started to move in unison. They quickly stood up straight and straightened their backs. Then they cupped their fists and respectfully knelt down in a certain direction in the sky. Welcome, Second Palace Master. The guards' voices were loud and clear. The guests were shocked. They dug their ears and looked at the guards kneeling on the ground in disbelief. What did they say? Second, Second Palace Master? The second Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness. This bunch of guards who disregarded the orders of Yan Zhenfei, the Palace of Darkness envoy, were kneeling down to welcome the second Palace Master. Chapter 2758. The sky was filled with thick ink as the black fog surged. Gradually, a black sedan descended from the sky. Surrounding the sedan were 4 beautiful ladies who looked the same as those Palace of Darkness guards. The black veil floated, and the figure in the sedan was faintly discernible. Dong! The sedan landed on the ground and a majestic aura spread out in all directions. It made the atmosphere of the grand ceremony to become extremely solemn and solemn. At this moment, the guests even breathed cautiously. This was the second Palace Lord of Darkness's palace? Everyone was shocked by the second Palace Lord's aura. But Yiqing Luo's focus wasn't on the second Palace Lord at all. She squinted her eyes as she looked at those guards who were kneeling on the ground. These guards' actions were a little too neat. Back then, the Godless Island's 3 evils, because they were triplets, their hearts were linked so they were able to move as one. But these guards, even if they had been trained together since young, it was impossible for them to be able to do it perfectly, right? Furthermore, their voices sounded extremely rigid. As compared to Mo Yuying's rigid, it was even more stiff. There was an indescribable strange feeling. These guards, it was probably true and they were hiding some secret. I heard that someone in the Miao tribe bullied our Palace of Darkness's envoy. The lady's cold voice had a special vixen feeling. A fair jade-like hand lifted up the black veil of the sedan. Following that, an exquisitely dressed lady dressed in the Palace of Darkness's long robe walked out. The lady was wearing a black veil, revealing only that pair of fox-like eyes, which could captivate one's soul. This woman's temperament was filled with the natural charm of a fox. Totally not on the same level as May's pretentious, seductive look. The guests present, even if they were ladies, were captivated by the second Palace Lord of Darkness's beauty. The second Palace Lord walked down the sedan, and the beautiful maids behind her went forward to support her. The second Palace Lord's footsteps were elegant and dignified. Her captivating eyes lightly swept past Mei and Yan Zhenfei, who were lying on the side of the sedan. Who hurt the Palace of Darkness's envoy? Mei's voice sounded softly. It was just like a normal question. However, everyone knew that it was just an illusion. The more soul-stirringly beautiful a woman was, the more dangerous it was. Especially when it was a beautiful woman with such a powerful aura and such a noble identity. What was even more dangerous was that it couldn't be touched. Under the immense pressure, everyone turned their gazes towards Yiqing Luo in unison. The second Palace Master's enchanting eyes curved into crescents as he followed everyone's gaze and looked over. Their eyes met. The second Palace Master's eyes flickered and he smiled. Why did you injure our palace's envoy? The second Palace Lord's voice was very gentle. It was impossible to tell that he was here to seek justice for his envoy at all. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she smiled evilly. Legitimate self-defense. The Deputy Palace Master tilted his head and continued to ask with a smile. So, it was my emissary who made the first move? Is it important who made the first move? Yiqing Luo had no interest in second Palace Lord's smiling tiger mask. The Deputy Palace Master did not get angry. Instead, he nodded in agreement. Indeed, it's not important. The two of them spoke one after another. The surrounding guests were all dumbfounded. According to the normal development of the plot, shouldn't they take action directly and fight? Chapter 2759. None of the guests had noticed the undercurrent between Yiqing Luo and second Palace Lord. But that didn't mean that Dmo Xian and the rest couldn't sense it. Zoemo poked his own arm as he trembled while looking at Gui Wu. Do all women get along like this? Her face was smiling and her tone was gentle. But every word and sentence was filled with undercurrent. On the other side, Yiqing Luo's smile was tainted with a trace of treachery. She tilted her head as the smile in her eyes became more and more evil. Since it's not important, why did second Palace Lord ask? Second Palace Lord seemed to be tired of the confrontation with Yiqing Luo as she lowered her eyes and continued laughing. Young lady, the important thing is, you hurt my envoy. So what does Second Palace Lord intend to do? Yiqing Luo raised her brows evilly. Second Palace Lord slowly walked towards Yiqing Luo as her actions were elegant and noble. You also know that the reputation of the secluded palace cannot be destroyed. You hurt my envoy, and that is challenging the prestige of the secluded palace. If I don't seek justice for the secluded palace's envoy, how would I be able to bear the title of Second Palace Lord? Young lady, do you think what I said is right? I thought that the secluded palace had long lost its reputation. Yiqing Luo didn't have any intention to retreat as she looked at Second Palace Lord, who was walking over with a smile. Second Palace Lord brought along an oppressive aura, as though she wanted to envelop Yiqing Luo in her oppressive aura. Yiqing Luo's brows raised slightly as her eyes were calm. After all, your envoy can't even command a guard. Until Yiqing Luo finished her words. Second Palace Lord didn't say a word. She raised her brows in interest as she sized Yiqing Luo up, as though she was surprised about something. This daring young lady was totally unafraid of her oppressive aura. The Second Palace Master's interest was piqued. Her mesmerizing eyes curved even more, and the smile in her voice deepened. Young lady, you're right. That's why I've come all the way here to punish these guards who have no foresight. Second Palace Lord's last word was settled. Faintly, there was a biting cold murderous intent. Following that, there was a burst of horrifying airwave. Bam! The Second Palace Master waved his sleeves. The thick profound energy was as fast as lightning as it charged towards the guards of the Abyss Palace who were kneeling in a row and not moving at all. Dong dong dong. Several heavy objects fell to the ground. The dozen or so secluded palace guards didn't even have the chance to scream before they died. They fell to the ground one after another. However, the most frightening thing was not the Second Palace Master's ruthless killing. Instead, it was extremely strange. It was so strange that the guests, who were used to seeing killing, all stood up. Some even screamed. When many women saw this scene, they all leaned towards the men beside them, seeking comfort. On the ground, the guards of the Dark Abyss Palace laid motionlessly. There is a kind of creepy feeling. The dozen guards were originally kneeling in a neat row on the ground. At this moment, they were neatly lined up in a row. One by one, they neatly fell to the ground. Be it the posture or the expression, they were all exactly the same, without the slightest deviation. This was only one of the strangest things. Chapter 2760. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she took a closer look. After staring for some time, she frowned slightly. Could it be that the reason why these guards died was because the Second Palace Lord's profound chi had condensed into a blade and slit their necks? But that wasn't right. Why was it that when their necks were slit, there wasn't a drop of blood? Was it because this Second Palace Lord's skills were swift? No matter how fast it was impossible that there wasn't a drop of blood. What on earth was going on? This Second Palace Lord, what on earth is she doing? She actually killed her own people? Isn't she afraid that after killing those guards, no one will protect her? She only has those 4 personal maids by her side. If something really happened, will they be able to protect her? Are you silly? Immediately a guest retorted. Didn't we see how powerful those guards were? However, the Vice Palace Master of the Gloomy Palace only moved her sleeves and easily killed more than 10 guards at the same time. Can't you see her strength? The Second Palace Lord of the Nether Palace is totally able to fight against 100. Why would she need the protection of those guards? Isn't it because she's the Second Palace Lord of the Nether Palace, and these guards are unable to resist? Earlier Second Palace Lord Speed, if it was you, would you be able to evade it? That guest who had doubts immediately kept quiet. That's right, the moment the Second Palace Lord made her move, they were all enveloped by the tumbling airwaves, and felt as if their bodies and minds were being burned by raging flames. How would they have any energy left to evade the Second Palace Lord's attack? The guest suddenly recalled that when Yi Luo was surrounded by those guards, He only used his speed and agility to evade the guards' encirclement. But towards those guards, he obviously had no way to fight against them. Otherwise he wouldn't have captured Messenger Yen, and used him to threaten him. To make those guards leave the Miao tribe. Master Gui Wu said that Yi Luo was Earth Profound 9th grade, and was about to step into the Sky Profound realm. Yi Luo wasn't a match for the guards of the Nether Palace. But the second palace lord of the Nether Palace could easily wipe out those guards. Which meant the second palace lord's profound grade was above Yi Luo. In other words, above the Sky Profound realm. Furthermore, it wasn't just the Sky Profound realm. This idea caused an uproar among the guests. Towards the power and strength of the Dark Nether Palace, he was filled with yearning. After all, this other world was a place where the strong ruled, and the weak were prey to the strong. Anything that could be explained with fists would never be explained with words. Previously, Yi Luo had been very powerful. The scale of the guests was tipping towards Yi Luo. Now the Vice Palace Master of Gloomy Palace had appeared. The balance of the crowd immediately tilted towards the Dark Palace. The Assistant Palace Master sensed the respect and reverence the guests had for her. A trace of disdain appeared on her face. She narrowed her mesmerizing eyes and chuckled softly. Although it was separated by a layer of black gauze, one could still vaguely see the outline and lines of the face under the veil. Her smile and frown were extremely charming. These useless trash, I have already settled them now. Second Palace Lord's gaze slowly shifted onto Yiqing Luo. As his smile deepened, "It's your turn." As the Second Palace Master's voice fell, her eyes, which were originally filled with smiles, at this moment, it suddenly froze into frost. Her arms opened wide as her body floated in midair. Chapter 2761. Light laughter spilled out from Second Palace Lord's mouth, extremely savage and extremely complacent. Suddenly, she raised her arm high up in the air. The surrounding airwaves surged and surged, flying towards the Second Palace Master's raised arm to attack. Kacha! A bolt of lightning tore a huge hole in the inky black sky. Second Palace Lord floated in midair. That torn hole was right behind her. It made her look as though she was an Azura who had crawled out from the entrance of hell. It made one's hair stand on end ineffably. The inky black sky surged. The raging wind brought along a raging wave of energy as it spread majestically across the entire public square. Strong. What powerful energy. Everyone's heart almost stopped beating at this moment. This energy had absolutely surpassed Yi Luo's energy by far. Yi Luo, this young genius young lady, was probably going to die here today. The guests felt some pity in their hearts. After Gu Jingyu sensed that man's powerful energy, his body suddenly turned stiff. You still don't intend to make a move? Miss Yi is not Secluded Palace's Second Palace Lord's opponent. His entire body was tensed up, as though he was suppressing something. Mo Xian's gaze didn't turn as he stared at Yiqing Luo's figure without blinking. As though he didn't hear Gu Jingyu's words at all. Gu Jingyu gritted his teeth. This man was wearing a half mask on his face. He couldn't tell the emotions on this man's face at all. Wasn't this man Yi Luo's fiancé? Why was he so indifferent towards Yi Luo's misfortune? Since this fiancé of yours is afraid of death, then don't blame me for interfering in your relationship. Gu Jingyu sensed the Second Palace Lord's profound qi fluctuating, and he couldn't bear it any longer. He flicked his sleeves, and was about to charge towards Yiqing Luo's direction. However, a single hand stopped him in his tracks. Zhou Mo raised one hand lazily as his narrow phoenix eyes rose upwards. Young Sect Master Gu, what are you trying to do? I'm going to save Miss Yi. Gu Jingyu raised his hand and chopped at Zhou Mo's arm. Young Master Mo, please step aside. Anyone with discerning eyes can tell that you have feelings for little Qing Luo. You went to save her. Are you trying to let those people assume that you and little Qing Luo have an affair? Zhou Mo didn't move at all. Gu Jingyu's face sunk and his eyes were filled with ridicule as he shot a glance at Mo Xian's direction. Yes, this young patriarch admires Miss Yi. Since Lady Ye's fiancé doesn't know how to cherish Lady Yi, then this young master will cherish her. Do you think you're a match for the Vice Palace Master of the Secluded Palace? Zoemo laughed. Cherish? Running to your death and making little Qing Luo feel guilty towards you, remembering you in her heart for the rest of her life. This kind of cherishing? You. Gu Jingyu clenched his fists. This young lord is indeed not the second palace master's opponent, but to have this young lord stand here and watch, this young lord cannot do that. But this young lord will not let you make a move. Zoemo smiled elegantly as his arm suddenly hooked around Gu Jingyu's shoulder. Following that, he forcefully pulled Gu Jingyu over to Gui Wu's side. As he walked, he said, "Young sect master Gu, little Qing Luo's fiancé's feelings towards little Qing Luo. You won't understand. Just stand here obediently. Don't let little Qing Luo be distracted and drag her down." Gu Jingyu was still struggling, but no matter what, he was unable to break free from Zoemo's restraint. Because of this, Gu Jingyu didn't see it. Chapter 2762. His eyes were focused and serious. In his mind, there was a blurry face that he couldn't see clearly. That face was smiling at him. Her coquettish voice seemed to be able to soothe all the bad emotions in his heart. "Ah Xian, I want to grow up alone. I want to rely on my own strength to stand by your side and walk side by side with you." The girl was smiling. Vaguely, he seemed to see that alluring face. It only took an instant for everything to return to its previous tranquility. Diemo Xian shut his deep eyes. He forcefully suppressed the restlessness that was constantly surging in his heart. He knew that person was Lil Luo Air. Even if their appearances were different, he could also confirm that person was Lil Luo Air. He promised little Luo Air. It would give little Luo a chance to grow. He should believe in Lil Luo His little Luo Air would become stronger when meeting strong opponents, and weaker when meeting weak opponents. There was absolutely no problem. However, there was always a voice in his heart that kept floating in his mind. They were clamoring for him to charge forward. Protect his little Luo Air. Protect his Lil Luo. He would not let Lil Luo be harmed in the slightest. Diemo Xian clenched his fist tightly, as he clenched it even harder. Everyone's attention was gathered on Yi Qing Luo's side. No one noticed it. Diemo Xian's eyes were hidden under the mask. His gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with determination and forbearance. Sometimes, they were infatuated with each other. This was the struggle between the love worm and Diemo Xian's consciousness. Love Gu activated his consciousness. He wanted him to protect Yi Qing Luo unconditionally, whereas the memories regarding Yi Qing Luo kept replaying in Diemo Xian's mind. Such a crisscrossing consciousness was activated. This made Diemo Xian's body gradually tensed up. However, no one noticed this. Even if he found out, he would only treat it as worrying about Yi Qing Luo. The other side. Yi Qing Luo raised her head up high and squinted her eyes slightly, looking at the second palace lord who was suspended in midair. The corners of her mouth curled into a teasing smile, revealing a hint of carelessness. It was as if he didn't care about the second palace master at all. But Yi Qing Luo indeed didn't treat the second palace lord as anything. She admitted. The assistant palace master was indeed very strong. Indeed, it was above her profound rank. However, it was not that she was no match for the deputy palace master. Just as Diemo Xian had said, she had a physique that grew stronger when encountering the strong and weaker when encountering the weak. The stronger the opponent, only then would her fighting spirit be aroused. The stronger the opponent, only then would she be able to gain actual combat experience and grow. Most importantly, as the saying goes, the connoisseur recognizes the artistry, while the layman enjoys the show. In the eyes of the crowd, the surging waves of terrifying aura of the second palace master were extremely horrifying and intimidating. But in the eyes of Yi Qing Luo and the other top exponents, that second palace master kept showing off and creating cool special effects. From the start, it didn't have the slightest bit of actual strength. In the air, layers upon layers of airwaves were constantly surging. Behind the second palace master, the streaks of lightning that had been torn apart continuously converged and spread out bit by bit. The profound qi at this moment suddenly expanded. The second palace master's gaze was like a torch as he stared coldly at Yiqing Luo. His raised arm instantly pointed downwards towards Yiqing Luo's face. "Anyone who dares to offend my secluded palace shall be killed without mercy." The raging waves of profound qi were like huge waves surging as it attacked the biting cold profound qi. At the same time, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the surging profound qi blowing towards her face. Chapter 2763. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as the smile on her lips blossomed like a poppy. His eyes were gradually filled with excitement. Her eyes flickered and her entire temperament suddenly changed. She was an elegant and lovely little beauty. At this moment, she had turned into a bloodthirsty and enchanting demon. Her eyes were filled with smiles as she looked at the incoming attack. This time she had no intention of dodging. Instead, her palms moved and her fingertips danced like a dancing fairy. A red feather fan appeared on her fingertips. Swoosh! The feather fan was opened and the red profound glow lingered around the feather fan. Under the lightning cliff, it gave off an extremely demonic aura, like a scorching flame, burning continuously. With Yiqing Luo as the epicenter, the ground started to crack, densely like a spider web as the cracks spread out. All these seemed to have taken quite a bit of effort. In actual fact, it was merely a moment. Bam! Vice Palace Lord's attack landed directly. Dust and thick and terrifying airwaves rolled, enveloping Yiqing Luo's surroundings instantly. It engulfed and covered up everything in the surroundings. Everyone's gazes were fixed on that area which was engulfed by the numerous air waves. One by one, they shook their heads and sighed. Indeed. Earth Profound 9th grade was after all not comparable to the Sky Mystic Overlord and above. However, with just one move, he had easily taken care of a 9th grade Earth Profound Realm Xian practitioner. The power of the Gloomy Palace was indeed well deserved. Some even felt that if the Vice Palace Lord was so powerful, then the Grand Palace Lord of the Gloomy Palace could be on the same level as the Overlord. No wonder the Gloomy Palace dared to say such words. To be able to surpass the Imperial Palace within a month. Looking at the Gloomy Palace, they could easily annihilate a bunch of powerful guards. Another Earth Profound 9th grade cultivator, which Master Ghost martial artist had high hopes of. This Gloomy Palace could absolutely surpass the Imperial Palace. Ding! All of a sudden, a crisp sound could be heard. The sound was extremely hurried. Instantly, it attracted everyone's attention, only to see in that dust and air waves. A bewitching red glow gradually spread out. The boundless air waves rolled like a tide. In just a few breaths' time, he had completely suppressed that powerful air wave. The red light continued to spread. It dispersed the chi wave created by the second palace master. Amidst the red light, the young girl's red dress fluttered in the wind like a blossoming rose, extremely flirtatious. The girl held a burning fan in her hand, and her fingers danced in the air. The fan opened and closed, like a fire elf, flying in the air waves. Clang! There was the sound of things colliding again. Yiqing Luo opened her arms wide. The fan in her hand, unknowingly, had already left Yiqing Luo's hand. It was moving at an extremely fast speed. He broke through the layers of air waves created by the second palace master. It struck a long sword in front of the second palace master. The instant the fan hit the longsword, the sword trembled. The layer of black mist that shrouded the longsword suddenly dispersed. Thump! A heavy object fell to the ground. The longsword fell to the ground. At the same time, the body of the second palace master, who was floating in the air, swayed and unexpectedly fell down uncontrollably. The second palace master's robes fluttered like butterfly wings. The black veil on her face was lifted, revealing half of her face. Yiqing Luo's gaze coincidentally fell on that half of her face. Suddenly, her eyes dimmed and her body froze. That face, was it her illusion? If she didn't remember wrongly. Chapter 2764. Damn it! This unforeseen event caused the assistant palace master's tone to be filled with killing intent. She raised her wrist abruptly. Just as she was about to land on the ground, A thick black fog surrounded her body. His rapidly falling body instantly landed steadily on the ground as light as a feather. She steadied herself and flipped her wrist once again. The long sword on the ground seemed to be sucked by something as it returned to her palm. Second Palace Lord's weapon is just a long sword? The young lady's clear voice was heard from behind. Her hand which was holding the long sword stiffened. Immediately, she turned sideways and tried to escape. But her feet had just started to move. He placed a hand on the second palace master's shoulder. The young lady's extremely melodious voice was heard clearly. Isn't Second Palace Lord going to clear the name of secluded palace? Why did you run away so impatiently the moment you saw me? The young lady was still smiling. That soft and slender fingers which were pinching on her shoulder looked weak and boneless. But she couldn't break free at all. As for the young lady, she didn't move at all. Under Yi Qingluo's strength, the second palace master turned around. She raised her eyes and met with a pair of narrow and devilish eyes. That pair of eyes were as bright as the stars, sparkling brightly. And faintly, there was a glint of flowing light. Just a glance. The second palace master had a feeling as though her soul was being sucked away. It was Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo's seemingly elegant face, but her aura did not diminish at all. The second palace master's heart thumped fiercely. Her mind recalled that person's exhortation in her ear. Be careful, especially towards that lady named Yi Qingluo. You must be on guard. Her ability is not as good as yours, but her potential is terrifying. She thought that in this lower realm, even if she met any genius cultivator, that person could only be considered as a genius from the lower realm. Because of that, she didn't put that person's exhortation to heart. However, at that moment, she seemed to have understood what that person meant. The second palace master's eyes turned slightly cold. She had underestimated her opponent. This time round, she would not give Yi Qingluo any chance to retaliate. A thought flashed across his mind. The vice palace master's expression suddenly became cold and gloomy. At the same time, profound qi surged from the assistant palace master's body. Two streams of profound qi that looked like black fog shot out from her body, transforming into two rays of profound light. With an irresistible force, it shot towards Yi Qingluo's face, directly piercing downwards. But the assistant palace master's plan failed again. Just as the second palace master's expression changed, Yi Qingluo had already sensed it. At the moment when the xian qi of the second palace master surged wildly, she immediately let go of her hands and moved to a safe place. Yi Qingluo wasn't flustered in the slightest. The expression on her face was calm and tranquil. It was a stark contrast to the deputy palace master's eyes, which were filled with rage. Is the second palace lord getting serious? Yi Qingluo's sweet voice was mixed with a slight smile. She looked like the girl next door, pure and innocent. However, the second palace master could see it clearly. The young lady's smiling eyes revealed a trace of ridicule. The vice palace master's eyes darkened. Her profound qi surged once again. Her eyes were aghast as she gave Yi Qingluo a warning stare. Chapter 2765. As she said that, she looked meaningfully at the long sword in Second Palace Lord's hand. Second Palace Lord's eyes were filled with emotions as her bewitching eyes stared widely. How do you know that this weapon isn't my weapon? Yi Qingluo shook her glower flame fan and held it against her lower jaw. The long sword's body is wide and the sword hilt is thick and the surface is stained with too much filthy blood stench. It doesn't look like a lady's weapon. She raised her brows and continued confidently. This long sword should be given to Second Palace Lord by someone who values Second Palace Lord. To protect Second Palace Lord. Earlier, Second Palace Lord was suspended in mid-air. When she was creating all kinds of powerful pressure, the long sword was firmly placed in front of the Second Palace Master's body. It was because she sensed that the long sword didn't look like Second Palace Lord's weapon. That was why Yi Qingluo directly struck down that long sword. As expected, just as she had guessed, this Second Palace Lord was the source of most of the profound energy. It was because of that long sword. What an observant young lady. When Second Palace Lord heard that, she didn't continue to refute. She sneered as she placed the long sword on her body and spoke coldly. "Young lady, since you're looking for death, I shall fulfill your wish." Her words had just ended. Second Palace Lord opened her fingers. A long whip with 9 segments appeared in her hand. The surrounding guests all sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw that long whip clearly. On that long whip, there was a tide of black fog which kept surging. Faintly, there was a flash of lightning like flowing light. It gave out a hissing sound. Was that a long whip or a poisonous snake? No matter how the crowd looked, they couldn't see clearly what the soft object under the fog was. When Yiqing Luo saw Second Palace Lord's weapon, her expression dimmed slightly as the serene look in her eyes turned deeper. Long whip. It was indeed a long whip. She didn't see it wrongly. This Second Palace Lord's face. Yiqing Luo stared at the layer of black veil on Second Palace Lord's face. Her gaze was burning as though it was burning. Second Palace Lord was distracted by Yiqing Luo's presumptuous gaze. She clenched the long whip tightly as the black qi lingered around it and struck directly. A powerful wave of qi swept out. The surging waves once again filled the air. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a sneer as she casually played with the glower flame fan in her hands. The moment the Second Palace Master's attack landed, Yiqing Luo's figure swayed. The two sides clashed. This time round, Yiqing Luo didn't adopt any battle tactics. Instead, he faced the Assistant Palace Master head-on. Powerful air waves constantly rolled in the air. The sky that was as dark as ink was covered densely with dark clouds at this moment, and it was mixed with lightning and thunder, causing the atmosphere to be extremely strange. Over here, the battle was in full swing. On the other side, it was completely impossible to see the silhouettes of both parties clearly, and they could only feel the vast and boundless profound energy. At this moment, the guests, who were bursting forth and rolling about, were in an uproar. A guest pointed at the two people fighting, his face full of disbelief. "Did I see wrongly? Just now I saw. Glowing flame fan? That woman called Yi Luo has the gourd flame fan? Gourd flame fan. Isn't that the weapon used by that young hero of the Western continent? Gourd flame fan. There seems to be only one in this world. Why is it in Yi Luo's hands?" The appearance of the gourd flame fan aroused the suspicions of numerous guests. Chapter 2766. Most of the people in Nirvana realm knew about Yiqing Luo's deeds. Naturally, they knew about Yiqing Luo's exclusive weapon. Suddenly the guests thought of something as they exclaimed, "Yi Luo! Yiqing Luo! The Overlord has publicly acknowledged the future mistress of the Imperial Palace, dressed in red, devastatingly beautiful. Overlord. Red. Yi Luo, Yiqing Luo?" The guests at this moment in their minds regrouped all these symbols together. Everything indicated. The lady named Yi Luo in front of them was the little hero of the West Continent, Yiqing Luo. And only Yiqing Luo could possess the only glower flame fan in the world. And only Yiqing Luo could get so much attention from the Overlord. And only Yiqing Luo, at such a young age, her profound grade had already broken through the sky profound stage, becoming the only one in Nirvana realm at such a young age to step into the sky profound stage. Not earth profound 9th grade, but sky profound supreme. She is Yiqing Luo, the Yiqing Luo, who is known as the female version of the Overlord. Suddenly, among the guests, a sharp female voice was heard, only to see a slender figure in a cloak, covering her face, suddenly stood up and stared at the two people who were entangled with each other. Her tone was filled with disbelief. On the side, a figure in the same cloak grabbed the arm of the lady in front and shook it anxiously. The lady in front turned her head to look at the lady behind her and impatiently shook her hand away. That lady staggered and fell onto the ground. The surrounding was a long table. The lady's head directly hit the long table when she fell. A loud dong sound was heard. It was extremely loud. When the crowd heard it, they felt a pain in their head. But unfortunately, that lady rubbed her forehead and stood up without a word. Not even a cry of pain was made. The lady in front didn't feel guilty because of her own actions. The wide black cloak covered her expression, only to hear her slightly hoarse voice sharp and ear-piercing. How could she be Yiqing Luo? Impossible. She is obviously a lowly student. The guests only felt that this voice sounded extremely familiar. But at this moment they couldn't recall. The guests sitting next to the woman suddenly looked at each other. Then, they stood up at the same time and rushed toward the woman who was rubbing her forehead. The woman was caught off guard and her hands were tightly held by the two guests. The guest raised his hand and lifted the woman's cloak. Under the cloak, a small and delicate face was revealed. The expressions of the two guests suddenly changed. Princess Beilan? Wasn't this woman the Northern Wave Continent's princess, Xia Lingling? Why was Xia Lingling here? Wasn't the Northern Wave imperial family in imminent danger? Xia Lingling's position as the princess was already in jeopardy. How could Xia Lingling appear here? Wait, this is Xia Lingling. Then who was that sharp-tongued lady? When the woman saw that Xia Lingling's face had been exposed, she cursed softly, "Trash." He quickly turned around, intending to leave. However, the crowd who had already found out about Yiqing Luo's true identity. He couldn't wait to find a chance to curry favor with Yiqing Luo. How could they possibly let off that lady who obviously had enmity with Yiqing Luo? Immediately, a few guests swarmed up and held that woman down. Lifting the black cloak. That person, wasn't she East Wave's young princess, Lan Ling Nua? Chapter 2767. After Lan Ling Nua was discovered, her expression instantly became somewhat ugly. She bit her lower lip tightly. The surrounding people were sizing her up with gazes which made her feel extremely embarrassed. But both her hands were restrained by the guests, so there was no way for her to struggle. Xia Lingling made a nasal sound towards Lan Ling Nua's direction. Her eyes were filled with fear and uneasiness. The crowd then recalled. Xia Lingling's tongue had already been plucked out by the overlord. So it's these two young princes who are about to become commoners. Ha ha ha. Do you feel especially slapped on the face? Some of them had long disliked these two princesses' way of doing things, and now that they had the chance, they couldn't help but ridicule them. Previously I always felt that no matter if it was status, ability or looks, I'm much stronger than Miss Yi. But now, ha ha ha, Miss Yi is the little hero of the West Continent, a genius with outstanding ability. Ha ha. The crowd roared with laughter. But they had long forgotten about it. Before this, their own Lan Ling Nua and Xia Lingling's attitude towards Yiqing Luo was no different. Just as the crowd was making a ruckus, a low and sullen voice, like 1,000 caddy-lead brick, fell heavily on everyone's hearts, pressuring them till they couldn't breathe. Shut up. It was just two simple words. The laughter and clamor stopped abruptly. The crowd turned their gazes towards the man who spoke out. His tall figure was tall and towering. Under the half-gold-rimmed mask, two eyes that were as deep as a lake seemed to be condensed with layers of frost. This was Yiqing Luo's fiancé. No, Yiqing Luo's fiancé. Wasn't he the overlord? This man was the overlord. The crowd's hearts suddenly felt a suffocating feeling. All the words were stuck in their throats. They didn't dare to make any noise. After all, Yiqing Luo was still in a life-and-death struggle with the second palace lord of Secluded Palace. The overlord's emotions were definitely unstable. If they made any noise and touched Yiqing Luo's bad luck, they would definitely be punished by the overlord. After a few big moves clashed against the moves, Yiqing Luo and Vice Palace Lord both retreated backwards. Because of the collision of the two's profound energies, the entire plaza's ground had already cracked open into pieces. The ground was full of holes and gravel. The raised platform and the flags fell to the ground. No matter how the two of them fought, it didn't even affect the guests. Second Palace Master retracted his long whip. His eyes were sinister as if he was dipped in poison, ruthlessly cutting Yiqing Luo's body. You really have some skills. Yiqing Luo's fingertips flicked as she played with the glower flame fan. Her jade-white fingers fused with the raging flames. In the eyes of others, Yiqing Luo was like a fairy who controlled the flames, noble and mysterious. She raised her lips and smiled in a low voice. Her eyes were also smiling. Vice Palace Master, you couldn't beat me before. Now no matter what method you use to quickly raise your profound level. But I can tell you for sure, you can't beat me no matter what. The Vice Palace Master clenched his fists and frowned. What do you mean? Before what? Did I know you before? 3 consecutive questions made Yiqing Luo squint at her eyes. She stared at the Vice Palace Master confidently for some time. Her carefree expression slowly converged and turned grave. Now do you recognize it? The second Palace Master's tightly knitted eyebrows had already formed several wrinkles. Second Palace Lord looked at Yiqing Luo's devastatingly beautiful face. There wasn't a single bit of shock or hatred in her eyes which Yiqing Luo had expected. Gradually, a layer of vigilance appeared in the eyes of the second Palace Master. He asked doubtfully, "Who are you? Why should this consort recognize you?" The look in the Vice Palace Master's eyes and her unfamiliar tone of voice. This made Yiqing Luo restrain the emotions in her eyes. Had she seen wrongly earlier? Or, this so-called second Palace Master had lost her memory? If the second Palace Master was really that person. At the moment she saw her, Chapter 2769. However, just now, when the second Palace Master's veil flew up, it landed on Yiqing Luo's face. But it was clearly imprinted in her mind. That face had been in her memory for more than 10 years. How could he be mistaken? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips, her eyes congealed slightly as she asked word by word. Are you Yiqing Qian? He had seen the face of the Deputy Palace Master from the very beginning. It was no different from Yiqing Qian's face. That was why she had noticed the weapon used by the second Palace Master. Then, he forced the second Palace Master to reveal her true weapon, the long whip. Yiqing Qian's weapon was a long whip. This made Yiqing Luo even more certain of the second Palace Lord's identity. However, she took off her human skin and revealed her true appearance. The Deputy Palace Master's reaction made her doubt her own conjecture. Yiqing Qian. The second Palace Lord murmured this name softly, without any other emotions in his eyes. Obviously, the second Palace Master was also unfamiliar with this name. Could it be second Palace Lord really wasn't Yiqing Qian? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. In his mind, he kept recalling the last time he saw Yiqing Qian. In her memory, Yiqing Qian was fed a pill by her to hang on to her life. Then, she beat him into a meat patty. Her face was completely ruined. His body had also become a pile of rotten meat. In the end, the wolf saint technique gave up. The effect of the medicine could only last for a few hours at most. Once the effect of the drug wore off, Yiqing Qian would rot and die in agony. However, the second Palace Master in front of him, regardless of appearance or figure, she was no different from Yiqing Qian. What was going on? Little girl, I don't have time to waste on you. Don't think of any roundabout schemes, I won't fall for it. Vice Palace Master's hair stood on end from Yiqing Luo's gaze. After the goosebumps, it was followed by the frustration of being humiliated. The second Palace Master's long whip moved, and his profound energy surged, once again setting off raging waves. Profound chi that caused one's heart to palpitate swept out like a tide. The airwaves lingering in the air were also rolling more and more violently. Yiqing Luo's reaction was swift. At the instance when the second Palace Master made his move, she moved quickly. A glimmer of light flickered in her charming eyes. With a flick of her fingers, the glowing flame fan unfurled itself from her fingertips, carrying a profound energy that could contend against the second Palace Master. She directly welcomed the attack. Meanwhile, Yiqing Luo's feet floated swiftly. His movement technique, which had been fused with the teleportation secret art, was unleashed to its fullest in this instant. In the blink of an eye, second Palace Lord's long whip had just collided with Yiqing Luo's profound chi. The sound of air currents rippling could be heard. The second Palace Master's expression changed as he realized something. She retracted her whip and quickly retreated. However, even if the second Palace Master's reaction speed was already godlike, It was still not enough. However, he was still a step too late. Just as the second palace master retreated, a red figure followed like a shadow into the eyes of the assistant palace master. The girl's pink lips curled up slightly, and there was a trace of unknown emotion in her eyes. She held out her hand. Her slender fair fingers tugged on the second palace master's black veil. The young girl's pink lips moved slightly, and using a voice that only the two of them could hear, she said, "Although second palace master's performance made me feel that I might have seen wrongly. But if I don't confirm it with my own eyes, I'm afraid I won't be able to be at ease." Presumptuous. The second palace master's eyes widened, as she raised her hand and slapped down on the young girl's shoulder. But Yi Qingluo laughed softly. The four beautiful maids each grabbed Mei, Yin Zhenfei, Sun Yutong, and the others, then lifted the palanquin and flew away. Yi Qingluo stood at her original spot, with no intention to stop him. They watched as the second palace master's palanquin disappeared into the ink-black sky. The cold and charming voice of the vice palace master came with the wind. "Little girl, don't celebrate too early. The palace of darkness will take revenge for your offense." The wind stopped. The voice dissipated. Yi Qingluo narrowed her eyes as she kept her glower flame fan. Just as she was about to return to Dmo Xian's side, she hadn't even turned around. A strong and powerful arm had already encircled her waist. Chapter 2771. Yi Qingluo's eyes were filled with a smile as she turned around and her arms circled around the person behind her. Ah Xian. His arms tightened around her waist. It was very powerful. It was as if he wanted to rub her delicate body into his. Yi Qingluo had just turned around, and was only able to call out his name. The man's overbearing and forceful kiss drowned out all sounds. He kissed her very hard. It was different from the gentleness and cautiousness from before. Instead, it was a kind of ferocity that was close to that of a wild beast, as if it wanted to swallow her whole. Yi Qingluo's breathing was almost swallowed by him. The mask on the man's face was somewhat enchanting. Yi Qingluo's mind went blank for a moment. Her hands gripped the man's collar tightly. In the end, he had almost no strength left. She could only rely on Dmo Xian's arm to support her body. Perhaps it was because Dmo Xian's kiss was too intense. Perhaps it was because they were in public, and there were at least 700 or 800 people watching from the side. Yi Qingluo's face was extremely red. The reaction was also very strong. Finally, after this kiss, Dmo Xian let her off when he saw that she was out of breath. However, his arms were still tightly wrapped around her. "Ah Xian." Her voice sounded a little broken because of her panting, and it was extremely flirtatious. Dmo Xian's body tensed up as he increased the strength of his arms and his warm breath heavily sprayed onto the skin beside her ear. "Lil Luo, I did it. I did it." His voice was hoarse. It was as if he was restraining some kind of emotion. He restrained himself for a long time. He kept murmuring these 4 words. Yi Qingluo didn't quite understand what Dmo Xian meant. But she could also feel the ups and downs of Dmo Xian's emotions. She wrapped her arms around his waist. Her gentle voice comforted him. Dmo Xian placed his head on her shoulder. "Lil Luo, I promised you that I would give you the chance to grow. To give you the chance to walk side by side with me. I did it. I didn't stop you from growing." The man's light words fell into Yi Qingluo's ears. She felt as if something had touched her heart fiercely. Her eyes became misty. She tightened her grip, raised her head, and said with trembling lips, You remember? I know the face in my mind is you." Dmo Xian gazed deeply at the devastatingly beautiful face in front of him, filled with certainty. After Yi Qingluo heard that, the touch in her heart grew deeper. Her hand moved from his waist to his face. Her slender fingers gently cupped his face. Even if it was covered by half a mask, he was still as peerless as ever. Her fingers trembled slightly. Her charming eyes reflected a man's face. Her Ah Xian did not remember the past. Ah Xian was poisoned by the love goo. Ah Xian, who cared about her wholeheartedly. Even in such a dangerous situation earlier, he did not make a move. Just because he had promised her before. Yiqing Luo could almost imagine Xian, who had been poisoned by the love goo, had to use a lot of willpower to restrain the love goo. Yiqing Luo's nose felt a little sour. Her curly long lashes were stained with some moisture. Her pink lips rose slightly as she cupped Dmo Xian's face. Bit by bit, she tiptoed and kissed his lips. Between her lips, a young lady's soft murmur drifted into his ear. Chapter 2772. The man's heart had been disturbed by the young lady's kiss. He heard the young lady's murmuring confession again. His body suddenly tensed up. Every piece of muscle, smooth lines. Yiqing Luo nestled in his arms. Naturally, she could feel the changes in the man's body. She raised her brows slightly and raised her head. Then she saw the man's pair of overjoyed eyes. It wasn't hard to tell that the man's face under the mask was overjoyed and had a dazed expression. She had confessed her love to Dmo Xian quite a number of times. But this was the first time she confessed to the man who had been poisoned by the love goo, whose mind was only filled with her. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a smile. The long and narrow arc was full of charm. She hooked the man's collar with one hand and her laughter was tainted with some evilness. Xian, I'm already so direct, don't tell me. You're not going to give me any response? The man seemed to have awoken from his dream as his peach blossom eyes fixed on her face. He still had a dazed look. Yiqing Luo smiled again. Dmo Xian opened his thin lips as his peach blossom eyes were filled with joy. I love little Luo the most. The words were at the tip of his tongue. Suddenly, it stopped abruptly. Dmo Xian's pupils constricted fiercely. A strange emotion surged up in his eyes. Yiqing Luo's smile instantly froze on her face. This was the omen of the centrifugal force goo acting up. What was going on? Why did the centrifugal force goo suddenly act up? Yiqing Luo's heart sank instantly. Last Luo, he has the centrifugal force goo in his body, and you still want to arouse his love for you. The centrifugal force goo will naturally not be happy. Old Man Song's helpless voice was heard in her mind. The main purpose of the centrifugal force goo is to drive the overlord and you apart, to let him kill you personally. Just now, Dizun recalled his past with you in the form of the love goo. The battle between the consciousness of his main body and the love goo has consumed most of his energy. Now you've made him love you even more. Yiqing Luo. She was just touched, just agitated, couldn't help but want to be intimate with his Xian. Was this wrong? Little girl, now is not the time to talk about right and wrong. Old Man Song interrupted Yiqing Luo's thoughts. This is the Miao tribe's Saintess selection ceremony and numerous guests are watching from the side. What you should consider is how to restrain the venerable overlord of the centrifugal worm. Don't let others see the abnormality of the venerable overlord. Old Man Song's reminder made Yiqing Luo's heart sink. Right, there were so many guests around, especially in the Miao tribe's territory. Once the news of Dmo Xian being poisoned was spread out, not only would Dmo Xian suffer from a large-scale attack, the gloomy palace would definitely make use of this opportunity to make the large palace fall and rise. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly. When she saw Dmo Xian's pair of warm and affectionate peach blossom eyes, gradually turning into an unfamiliar icy chill, she abruptly raised her hand and hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck. Dmo Xian had just switched modes and had yet to react. She directly kissed his lips. Moreover, the kiss was very forceful. Dmo Xian's muffled groan could be heard faintly. It was obvious that his lips were broken. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about it as her other hand hooked onto his neck. Dmo Xian's brows creased as he raised his hand and wanted to send this audacious young lady flying. But when his gaze fell onto that alluring face, his hand paused slightly. The delicate soft body that was forcefully stuffed tightly clung onto his body. The young lady's fragrance seeped into his nose. Chapter 2773. This alluring face was very unfamiliar. But Dmo Xian felt that it was familiar. In his mind, He automatically overlapped this face with the bold lady who had been rude to him several times before. This was Yi Luo. Dmo Xian's eyes flickered slightly. His arm was about to move. The young lady's hand, wrapped around his body, as if soft and boneless, hanging on his body softly. The young lady's lips were a little distance away from him. Vaguely, a trace of crystal could be seen. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes, her long and narrow eyes, deliberately dyed with a trace of poppy-like charm, smiled wickedly. Overlord, let's talk about a deal, how about it? The young lady's fragrance, like orchid, blended with his breath. Dmo Xian faintly felt that his heart was spreading some kind of emotion, constantly gnawing at his heart, trying to avoid this complicated emotion, trying to push the young lady away. But the young lady came closer again. Their lips were almost touching. The young lady's enchanting eyebrows became more and more soul-stirring. That pair of glistening eyes, the rays of light flowed, sparkling. Just looking into her eyes, it was as if he had sunk into her charm, unable to extricate himself, and unable to control himself. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened. This woman was really an evildoer who bewitched people, bewitched the masses. There had never been anyone like her, who could affect his emotions, his thoughts. But she was able to break his taboo time and time again. This feeling of being affected by a woman, his emotions. It really made him unhappy. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened, as if he was pondering about something, or as if he was quietly looking at something. The man's eyes were very deep, very dark. Just looking at his eyes, there was no way to tell what kind of mood he had at this moment. But even if she couldn't see his peerless beauty in full view, but just staring at his eyes, looking at his smooth lines, smooth chin, and that as if tempting her to kiss his thin lips, it was also a delightful thing to see. Probably because Yiqing Luo's naked eyes stared a little too much. The man's long and narrow peach blossom eyes slightly raised a little. He chuckled. Their lips were almost touching, and she could feel his breath. Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned slightly red. However, her expression was still as charming as before. What kind of deal? Tell me about it. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened, and his voice was filled with ridicule. Seeing that the man had a reaction, Yiqing Luo moved her lips away and whispered into his ear. Accompany me until the end of the ceremony. Accompany you? Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes curved as the corners of his mouth curled up, becoming more and more playful. Yiqing Luo expressed that looking at a half-covered beauty at such a close distance was really a test of her self-control. There was a smile in her voice. Yes. What are the benefits? Dmo Xian didn't accept, but he didn't reject either. Asking like this meant that there was a chance. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as her voice hooked out a tinge of coquettishness. After this ends, I'll be at your disposal. You can do whatever you want to me. Anything? Dmo Xian repeated these 4 words with a smile which didn't look like a smile. His eyes looked at her and suddenly lowered his voice a little. Rascal. Including sleeping with you? Yiqing Luo was stunned. She didn't expect such a serious Dmo Xian to say such rascal words. Her charming eyes rose, meeting Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes which were filled with ridicule. Chapter 2774. Looks like you really like me. Dmo Xian's voice was extremely light, without any extra emotions. Yiqing Luo expressed that this Dmo Xian looked like an abstinent male god. An inviolable look. She smiled with her eyes curved, seemingly very happy. Yes, I like you very much. The young lady didn't conceal her loving gaze. This made Dmo Xian's thin lips inexplicably pulled into an arc. But the next moment, there was another inexplicable emotion that began to disturb his heart. There was a voice in his mind. It kept telling him, push away the young lady. Stay away from the young lady. Gradually, it formed a very powerful thought. Kill the young lady. His brows tightened, feeling a little strange about this inexplicable emotion. Obviously, he was hugging the young lady, flirting with the young lady. Under this kind of atmosphere, it was impossible to have the thought of killing the young lady. But this kind of thought really existed. His body had a strange feeling. DM Xian's peach blossom eyes flashed a trace of fluctuation. He once again fixed his gaze on Yiqing Luo. He wanted to find an answer from Yiqing Luo. The young lady was still smiling. A pair of sparkling eyes, as if bearing thousands of peach blossoms. Reflected in her eyes was only his shadow. For some reason, DM Xian had already abandoned the strange emotion in his heart. His thin lips moved, spitting out a word. All right. As soon as he said that word, a cold light flashed in his eyes. The smile on the young lady's face became even more brilliant, like a blooming poppy, releasing its most seductive power. DM Xian's mind moved. Suddenly his big palm covered the back of Yiqing Luo's head, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. This kiss was very affectionate, gentle, as if water could be squeezed out. Yiqing Luo almost indulged in this kind of torturous kiss. But DM Xian only kissed familiarity, until his breath covered her layer after layer. He released her. Yiqing Luo's eyes were stained with a trace of crystal, because of his kiss. He let go. Yiqing Luo's thoughts were still empty, as she grabbed DM Xian's collar. Staring at Yiqing Luo, the man's eyes dimmed slightly, covered with a layer of desire. What a lovely little vixen. He really wanted to devour her bite by bite. However, the timing and location were both wrong. Thinking of the young girl's cunning, he smiled charmingly and said, "Including sleeping with me." DM Xian's expression darkened further. Forget it, since the girl wanted him to accompany her. He accompanied her. Perhaps after obtaining her, they would feel that she was no different from other women. He wouldn't be affected by this woman anymore. DM Xian retracted his breath and tightened his arms, bringing her petite body into his embrace. His low and husky voice moved closer to her ear and laughed. "This is the interest. After tasting it, it's not bad. I will reluctantly agree to your deal." Yiqing Luo was still in a daze. He couldn't help but sigh. DM Xian's honey trap really made her unable to stop herself. However, at least he had reached an agreement with him. As long as DM Xian sat with her properly, and finished participating in this Saintess ceremony, the rest of the matter would be discussed in private. Yiqing Luo hugged his waist, and buried her head in his chest. The man didn't resist, nor did he have any intention to push her away. Yiqing Luo was assured as she hugged DM Xian's waist, and walked towards their position. Chapter 2775. No matter if it was Yiqing Luo's real identity, or her real looks. Furthermore, the Overlord was present at the scene, and even displayed affection with Yiqing Luo in public, breaking the rumors of abandonment. All kinds of things. All the guests who were watching were shocked. They recalled that they had previously spoken out to humiliate Yiqing Luo, belittling the imperial palace in front of the emissary of the Palace of Darkness and the vice palace master. Their hearts were in their throats. However, the two people who had disturbed everyone's mind did not seem to be affected at all. En lovingly returned to his seat. He even acted as if there was no one else around, showing off his affection and feeding him food. Naturally it was Yiqing Luo who was feeding DM Xian. Peach, who was sitting by the side in a daze, looked at Yiqing Luo's smiling face, peeling grapes for DM Xian and feeding him. Her mouth twitched. After not wearing the mask, you can let go of yourself? Just now when he saw the two of them, the atmosphere was clearly different. His Majesty's aura had also changed. The group of them thought that Lord Dizun was suffering from the effects of the centrifugal goo. He was about to flip out on the spot. He didn't expect to be stuffed with dog food instead. Overlord he. Xiao Jin held Yan Xiaoyi, whose expression wasn't very good, as he looked at DM Xian worriedly. His centrifugal force goo, will it affect? No problem. Yiqing Luo placed the grape into DM Xian's mouth. The man sat on the cushion lazily. His feet were slightly bent. One hand rests on the knee. He looked lazy and noble to the extreme. When Yiqing Luo's grape was brought to his lips, he lazily opened his mouth. His thin lips brushed past Yiqing Luo's fingers faintly. Yiqing Luo's fingertips trembled, but she didn't say a word as she continued to peel the grape skin while glancing sideways at Xiao Jin. The overlord has always been honest and trustworthy. He promised me that he will accompany me till the end of the grand ceremony, so he will stay till the end of the grand ceremony. Her words were directed at Xiao Jin, but in actual fact, it was for Dmo Xian to hear. As smart as Di Zun was, how could he not understand the deeper meaning of the girl's words? He narrowed his long and narrow eyes. His thin lips curled up into an extremely shallow arc. When the girl gave him another grape, he opened his mouth and bit the girl's finger. A slight prickling pain made Yiqing Luo frown as she stared at him resentfully. Dmo Xian loosened his grip and casually shifted his gaze onto Yiqing Luo's face as he gave a casual smile. This lord is not an honest and trustworthy person. Everything depends on this lord's mood. Yiqing Luo. Fine, you're the boss. Couldn't she spoil him to death? Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and smiled. Yes, I will definitely serve the overlord well, so that the overlord can maintain his mood. Her voice was dry and stiff. Even when he smiled, it felt like a fake smile. Xiao Jin and the others couldn't help but shiver when they heard the word concubine, rubbing their arms. However, a certain man was in a good mood and nodded with satisfaction. Yiqing Luo. After his goo worm was cured, he would definitely kneel on the washboard. Yiqing Luo suppressed the surging emotions in her heart, and was about to take the grapes to serve this Buddha properly. Her peripheral vision suddenly caught a glimpse of something. Her slender brows creased as she immediately drew out her handkerchief and wiped off the grape juice on her fingers. Chapter 2776. Dmo Xian raised his brows, puzzled by Yiqing Luo's actions. Was she not going to serve him anymore? Yiqing Luo didn't look at him as she lifted her feet and walked towards a certain direction. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as he slowly propped himself up. That was where Miao Yi was. At this moment, Miao Yi was standing beside the corpses of the Palace of Darkness guards, calmly commanding the Miao guards to carry the corpses. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao stood beside her, their brows tightly furrowed as they spoke to Miao Yi. His emotions seemed to be somewhat agitated. From time to time, Miao Yi would glance sideways and respond to the two elders. Meanwhile, the two elders' faces turned uglier and uglier. He seemed to be arguing with Miao Yi about something. Yiqing Luo also saw this scene, hence she immediately rushed over. Looking at Second Elder Miao's fawning attitude towards the Palace of Darkness just now. Later on, the Vice Palace Master of Gloomy Palace appeared. Second Elder Miao's heart was probably biased towards the Dark Nether Palace. He might even vent his anger on Miao Yi because of this. Although Miao Yi looked very calm and collected at the moment, and her way of doing things also had her own style. However, Miao Yi was only a 14 or 15-year-old girl after all. Before returning to the Miao tribe, she was still that simple-minded girl who would occasionally reveal a hint of cuteness. Miao Yi had undergone such an earth-shattering change in just a month. Thinking about it, Miao Yi must have had a very hard time in the Miao tribe this month. But Yiqing Luo didn't intend to care about Miao Yi's hard work for this 1 month. After all, this was the path that Miao Yi had chosen. Become the Miao tribe leader, become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. The pressure on Miao Yi would be even greater than now. The days ahead would only be more difficult than now. These were things that Miao Yi had to bear. Before he even got close to the corpse of the Palace of Darkness guard, Second Elder Miao's angry voice rang out. Miao Yi, since you want to be the leader of the Miao tribe and become the saintess, shouldn't you prioritize the interests of the Miao tribe? Fourth Elder Miao also tried his best to persuade her. That's right, Miss Miao. You are the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Everything in the Miao tribe will belong to you. For the sake of the Miao tribe, it's just a small matter to her. However, this will be of great help to the Miao tribe. No. Miao Yi spat out the word without hesitation. Her face was cold and gloomy. He was probably annoyed by the two elders' harassment. After saying this, she turned around and was about to return to the waiting room for the selection of the Holy Maiden. Second Elder Miao immediately chased after her. Miao Yi, What do you want? Whatever conditions you have, just state them. I don't want anything. Meow Yi halted her footsteps as she decisively rejected. Second elder Meow. I won't open my mouth to Qing Luo. She's my friend, not a tool to be used. Isn't it normal for friends to help each other? Second elder Meow was still unwilling to give up. Meow Yi could not be bothered to say anything more to second elder Meow. Suddenly he heard a sweet voice with a smile. What are you talking to me about? Meow Yi was stunned as her gaze turned towards the direction of the voice. She saw that young lady who was clad in raging flames looking at her with a light smile. Meow Yi's heart quivered slightly. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.